Hello, everyone, and welcome to another. Where are you two? Hold on a minute. There you go. Boys are back. Simon, how are you doing this week?
Good. I'm just enjoying another beautiful spring day in this country in which I've spent so much of my adult life and admire so much.
Admire so much. How are you doing, Horace?
I'm all right, thanks. I hope people will let me know if I don't sound that good, because I've actually listened back to loads of Kato, and my mic wasn't that great on some of them, so do tell me in the chat. But thanks for having me back on. Hope everyone's doing well.
You know, I collated some stats, Horace, and you not only debuted earlier than Simon, but you racked up a good number of appearances. So by the stats, this is certainly the dream team, three of us here.
Yeah.
I will give big props to Ben Pyle, who was a bloody excellent guest. He knows his shit, that guy.
Yeah, he does, doesn't he? He really does know it. I mean, we got in a ringer, basically, because Simon and me, you know, well, we know a few things, but on a topic like that, you kind of... I've noticed, though, that for every Ben Pyle appearance, I don't know if you noticed this, Simon, no matter how short, because we did a couple where we were off YouTube, didn't we?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if we talk for 5 minutes or 2 hours.
Yes.
It had the Wikipedia climate change notice on YouTube. Did you notice that?
Oh dear.
So anyway, where were we? 1980. Well, we're going to go back to the 1980s today. We're going to go right the way back to the very first thing that Adam Curtis put out on the BBC, which is it was called Selfridges. I mean, what was it called again? Sorry.
Yeah. It's a strand. A series of programs. It was called Just Another Day, and it's
Just Another Day. Yeah.
It was about going into British institutions, and it was between 1983 and 1986. British institutions, and just spending sort of fly on the wall time with people. And I have to say, I hadn't made any notes for this one because I didn't know which one we were going to be starting with today. But this is a lovely piece. Real great observation. It's just taking you back to a completely different age, but one within our memory, of course. And it's very kind of bittersweet to watch this. But they did lots of things. They did Selfridges, they did Sotheby's, they did the Battersea Dogs Home. They even did one on traffic wardens, which is a curious one, and the Natural History Museum, the Tower of London, and Richmond Park. You might know that, having been a Southwest London lad.
Oh, I know Richmond Park very well.
It's a lovely place.
There's a hideous... I mean, I'm not having a go at the people who live there, but there's one of the worst kind of brutalist kind of housing estates they built right on the edge of Richmond Park. And I've got a neighbor here who's almost 100. I think she's 99 years old, and she said, I remember when those were built, and it was just hateful policy from the Labour government at the time. Put those, they're probably highly sought after now, I'd imagine, because I mean, you're right on Richmond Park, and there's a kind of brutalist revival thing where people kind of actually like unironically like brutalism. I had a colleague back at the university who was a proper anti-humanist, who actually just loves brutalism for its pure kind of hard-edged materialism.
There is something interesting about it. I mean, I always bring up that thing that Bowden talked about with the kind of modernism / brutalism that was done in the UK, and the way that it didn't have that soaring, aspirational, ethereal quality that it did with Le Corbusier in France. Here it was all they talked about. You talked about the sort of the woodiness of the wood, and the sandiness of the sand that's used in the materials to make it. It was all, as you say, about that, foregrounding the materials in a very sort of what they thought was a revelation, a sort of socialist revelatory kind of way as to the materiality of the building. It's really interesting. We'll come to it when we do the Great British Housing Disaster. There'll be interesting elements to talk about there. And as you say, there's these people. I mean, some stuff. I mean, I used to work at the Barbican in London, which is a sort of massively fated example of new brutalism.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this colleague of mine lives there.
Yeah,
she lives in that structure. To
be fair, you go off and look at flats for sale in the Barbican. I mean, you won't get much change out of £1 million, and they are very nice, airy flats if you like that kind of stark modernist style. But of course, you look out the window and you just see the sort of the walls and the windows of all the other flats, so it can feel very strange. But the walls in that place, I mean, they're like a foot thick, so you can crank up the stereo. And live very sort of compartmentalized lives from people. But that's like the ultra chic example of it, compared to what I got to live in.
I live in a modernist apartment, as some people may be aware, but it's not brutalism. It's known as a span development, designed by a chap. I think his name was Sir Eric Partridge.
Was it all modernist then before brutalism sort of came in? More the
it was kind of like proper modernism where
I
mean the reason that we got it, not just the location, of course, is that the missus loves light and she loves greenery, and basically, like, how can I explain? I mean, the walls are just I mean, it's just huge windows, just lots and lots of windows. So you really do know when it's morning. I
kind of like that. I kind of like that stuff.
I mean, it's cool. I mean, it's cool. When we first moved in, the original 1958 water boiler was still there, and it was this massive water tank, right? And when we had something go wrong with it, and the guy came and said, "Oh, that's not going to pass your regulations, mate. You need to get a combi boiler in." Worst thing we ever did, because that old water tank meant that when you turn the tap on, it was hot immediately.
Yeah.
Right now, you have to wait like a minute for all the water to come around. It's like we've literally made it worse by replacing the boiler. So that was a massive error that we made, but it was something to do with the tank had acquired rust since the 50s.
Right.
And so it was like now, considered dangerous or whatever, but we still lament it every time we turn the taps on.
I have that as well. Yeah, you run your hand under it, to do the washing up or something, and you think, come on, I can't wash up in sort of cold, lukewarm water. And you're waiting 3 or 4 minutes for the thing just to heat up to some decent temperature to be useful. Horrible.
Do you want a quick tidbit, since you mentioned about flats around the Barbican? Do you know who's famously got a second home? Well, not that famously, but who has a second home in the Barbican flats? Is Arthur Scargill.
Oh, does he?
His main home is in Yorkshire, but he also owns a £1 million flat.
Wow.
Barbican. Yeah.
I wonder if he's a regular at the theatre there. Because I used to go to Barbican regularly, taking a Shakespeare class down there. Anyway, I had a friend who worked there as well as like one of the managers. Hello, if you're watching.
Oh.
Yeah. Although when I became you'll like this, Horus. When I became kind of more libertarian, I posted that, there's that quote about the invisible hand from Adam Smith. And I remember I put it on my Facebook once, and this friend of mine who said, "You have to be joking." When I talked about the invisible hand, I was like, "Oh, well, what's wrong?" He was like, "Come on." So I don't know if like we semi fell out over my brief flirtation with it being a free market guy, but
that's what the invisible hand in particular is one of those phrases. It's got its whole other meaning among leftist circles. They've passed that around so much. It's like it does not have any bearing on anything to do with what Adam Smith originally meant by it. It's just the horror phrase for them, like the invisible hand. You stupid. They just think it's ludicrous.
Well, this friend of mine, who I used to go to university with, I don't know if he's still at the Barbican, or he was a few years ago. He had this phrase which he loved saying, back in '86. He uses it back in '86 because he had this idea of like, reminiscing about the old days, and he'd set it off by saying, "Oh, back in '86. Do you remember when?" You know, obviously we were both like 4 years old in 1986, but we are going back to the '80s today to have a look at this scene in Selfridges, the year I was born, in fact, 1982. But I have had a recent bout on Twitter of 80s nostalgia, which we were talking about.
Yes.
Golden Wonder crisps. Do you know, somebody replied to me saying, "I've never heard of Golden Wonder." That was Britain's #1 brand of crisp, all when I was a kid, up until about, I don't know if you remember, like at some point, Golden Wonder disappeared from the shelves, and it was just wall-to-wall Walkers with maybe like a bag of Dorito selection and Walkers. Walkers have become very ubiquitous now in this country, but it used to be. I remember it was like the Coke and the Pepsi were Golden Wonder and Walkers. I don't know what happened to them. I did have a look, and they were bought by the Irish company Tato, and they still exist. Like Golden Wonder still exists, but they're just not distributed anywhere. I don't know when the last time.
You were saying you can't get them. You're saying you sort of have to travel between supermarkets to find both the Orangina and the Golden Wonder magical combination.
Yeah, well, I mean, you don't. I mean, I just don't see Golden Wonder on the shelves ever anymore.
I haven't seen them since the 90s, I don't think.
It's being hidden from us.
Yeah, but they're still made, though. Like, you can buy them off Amazon, for example.
But you can still get Tizer, right? But
we were still talking about where Orangina, and like you associated it, Horace, with going on a holiday to France. Like, you'd only see Orangina in those sorts of weird.
I thought it was French, yeah.
I can only ever remember having Orangina in weird, like, let's say you had to visit somebody at the hospital. They'd like sell Orangina in the hospital. It was like weird things like that. But they're very inconsistently available. So when you come across an Orangina, I was like, I always buy one out of curiosity. But then if you go back to the same place like a month later, the Orangina's gone again. So I don't know what their distribution model is, but very obscure item to get hold of.
Interesting you talk about it in hospitals there. It's almost, because I was a little bit before, so I mean the thing I remember back in the 70s was like Tizer, when Tizer came wrapped in the sort of crinkly cellophane, and everybody nostalgizes about that. But it was the sort of transitional drink that, you know, you could ask to have when you were feeling sick, so you didn't have to go to school. And then, you know, maybe Orangina took over some of the medicinal soft drink qualities that you were needing there to sort of flag your way.
As a kid, we used to see Orangina in France. It wasn't usually a loud one because it's like a whole pound or something for a bottle, because it was in a glass bottle in France. But when we came back to Britain, it wasn't around until like the mid-90s, and then it was a big thing in Britain. I don't know. I never used to see it in Britain until then. But yeah, it was always in France. It was always in glass bottles. In Britain, we're not trusted with glass bottled drinks for some reason. You can't get Coke in a glass bottle unless you go to like Pakistani shops or something. I don't know. Like, it's weird. But
we were talking about Pakistani shops as well, because another distinct memory I have of the 80s, when I was a very young boy, to be honest, I was, you know, I was an infant in the 80s, let's face it, was that, I mean, one thing is that those old corner stores had a very distinct smell, and I'm not talking about the smell of curry. I'm saying there's a very distinct corner shop smell I can remember from those days.
Through the smell of curry, you could smell something.
But they sold these milkshakes, right, which was in a plastic bottle, which had like a foil top, and they only came in 3 flavors: strawberry, banana, and chocolate. And I don't know what happened to them, but somebody on Twitter actually found the exact ones that I have on a watch. If you were in Australia, Simon, you won't remember those, obviously.
No. We didn't. We had out there was a flavored milk called Move, which was my favorite. Chocolate Move was lovely stuff. But no, didn't get.
They look like this. And they were like a foil top on a plastic bottle.
It's almost like the old Bill Hicks thing when he talks about coming to England, and he says they have all these socialized drinks over there with names like Orange Drink, and it's just like flavored milk in a sort of socialist packaging there. Doesn't have any pretense.
The only other thing I discovered on this little mini nostalgia tour is that Golden Wonder apparently invented cheese and onion as a flavor, and that's why they made such a big deal about Walker's changing the color from green to blue or something. Because Walker's copied Golden Wonder having cheese and onion as a flavor at all. So
for years, Walker's was the one that stood out. Yeah, most people had salt and vinegar as blue and cheese and onion as green, and Walker's were the other way around until maybe a certain point. Maybe now they're normal.
Yeah,
it's like America with the colours of the political parties.
Now the selection in so many places is like you can have Walker's or supermarket's own, and there's no like other crisps really.
I think the big companies buy that basically, don't they? They pay the supermarkets not to stock their enemies. Basically, I think that's how it works.
Yeah, so I think Walkers have like muscled out Golden Wonder. Also, when I was again, at some point when I was like 9 or 10, my dad had an opportunity to work for Walker's crisps, but we'd have to move to Leicester, and I really wanted to I really wanted him to get that job, so I could, because as part of the package they got like unlimited free crisps, and I was like, Dad, you have to do it because of the. And he was like, No, I'm not moving to Leicester. Dodged a bullet there, didn't I?
It was like a Willy Wonka moment, though. You thought in your mind, a golden ticket to endless crisps. I was more of a Monster Munch man when I was a kid, and especially pickled onion flavor when they first came out.
May I ask, you said that Orangina was something you didn't see everywhere, but you did see it when if you went into a hospital, hospital cafeteria or something. You guys must remember this. Like people sort of under a certain age wouldn't, but there used to be a lot of variation like that in what was available where. It wasn't like you went in every shop and they had almost the same stuff in every shop. There was often,
now, isn't it?
There was scope for different brands and stuff, and there was a larger range of brands in general. And I remember if I went to other parts of the country, sometimes there were brands I'd never seen before.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of miss it. I grew up in a seaside town, and there are kind of like weird little ice cream brands that only exist in like this one shop, or there was like brands that are kind of I don't really understand where they're from. Like there was it Milkmaid or Dairy Maid or something? And I'm like, they're kind of around, but they're not. Now it's like every single shop has got, it's the same ones.
Yeah.
Right. It's the same ones.
They buy the same freezer full of ice creams. It's the same, literally the same whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just, yeah, I do miss the variety a little bit. Trying to think now where you still see a bit of it, right? Some corner stores stock a crisp called Roysters.
Yeah.
They're kind of like bubble up. You don't see them in the supermarkets. They're only in the corner stores. Roysters.
They're strong steak flavor.
Strong, like American steak flavor Roysters. So you get a bit of it, but not that much. Anyway, if anybody knows where stocks Golden Wonder, let me know. Specifically in the southeast, they don't go with Morrison's because there aren't any Morrison's around here.
I see in the chat, Pink Elephant says he worked at, or she said, or he or she worked at Seabrooks in Bradford. I don't know if Seabrooks crisps are very nice. So, they are tasty.
One of the things I've been doing since last week, before we get going here, Simon, is I've been doing Adam Curtis remixes of various famous scenes. So here is Beating Up the Homeless as reimagined by Adam Curtis. I mean,
contrapuntal darkness.
you can have endless fun with this. I had a go of here's 50 Cent, a song called Heat, remixed by Adam Curtis. love this video because literally he's rapping and this guy is being fucking decked behind him. It's just like, yeah, this sort of stuff happens in the hood. Like, you just got to expect. Like,
there's no situation of urban violence that Floyd Kramer's On the Rebound won't improve immeasurably. I always had a fantasy of. Do you ever remember seeing Tony Hart, the art guy, on television?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he used to do Vision On, and they would have the sort of the nice little tune that played when they went to the gallery. It's called Left Bank 2 by the Noveltones. And I've always dreamed of making a film with a sort of incredibly violent gunfight sequence, like a Sam Peckinpah film, with like blood shooting out of people in slow motion to the tune from Vision On.
Or something like Threads to that kind of music, like just degeneration into the abyss.
People's eyeballs melting to jaunty jazz piano.
Pioneer the contrapuntal style.
Yes. I'll have some comments on contrapuntal music at the end of the stream that a viewer has sent in for us.
There's I had a lot of fun with this. I reimagined Reservoir Dogs by I mean, it just improves everything. I particularly like the ending here of Mr. White in agony when he realizes that. Sorry for spoilers, everyone, but he realizes something about this guy he's been protecting the whole film.
Beautiful.
Oh, I love it. So anyway, so what was interesting about this, Simon, is that we're going right back to the start of Adam Curtis's career here.
Yeah. And
clearly, the BBC are going through a bit of a phase where cinema verite is in style. They kind of fly on the wall. I'm trying to remember what they were called now. There's a film I really love from the 60s called Salesman.
Oh yeah.
Have you ever seen that?
No, but these sort of observational kinds of things.
It's by the brothers Albert and David
Maysles. The Maysles brothers.
Maysles, yes.
They did the famous Rolling Stones film, didn't they?
That's right. And another person. And there's a film called Titty Cut Follies, which is set in a kind of mental asylum. Really dark, actually. But again, the kind of camera doesn't judge; it just kind of watches real people with minimal comment. And then the other pioneer of the cinema verite in this country was somebody we've talked about before, Nick Broomfield, who had that. He's got one called Who Cares, which is in similar territory to the one we're going to watch in a couple of weeks about the housing crisis and the knocking down of the old Victorian houses and the putting up of the high rises and so on, and the demolishing of the communities. And he also, I think, went on to make music documentaries later on.
Biggie and
Nirvana,
Tupac,
and the Tupac one.
Kurt and Courtney.
He did one on Eugene Tel Blanche as well.
That's right. Yes, the what was the leader, the driver, and the driver's wife, or something. That one. And he did a good one called Buffalo Girls, one of his early ones about, I think, female recruits into the US military, which is really interesting. That's kind of part of where Curtis is coming from as well. He learned early on this thing of letting it run long. And when he was doing things like That's Life with Esther Ranson, that was something I think he got advice on, that basically if you let things run long, people become funnier the longer you leave the camera running.
Like Louis Theroux as well, right?
Louis Theroux I've always found in a slightly dishonest way.
Oh, yeah, I don't like it, but he does do that.
He always comes in a kind of, who, me, journalist, and he's obviously there to undermine people. And he sort of leaves those pregnant pauses to make people look stupid, and he asks them questions.
I find it really cheap and low,
he's horrible. But, he's made some amusing films, I suppose, but they're always there with the intent to wrap people up in their own sort of foibles. Which I think is a bit cruel, actually, quite often.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were saying about that technique though is that sometimes it's just a case of leaving the camera running. Right?
Yeah. And Curtis learns to do this with his archive footage, but also with his interviews. And he talks about this in one of the interviews. I can't remember which one, but he talks about this thing of the interesting stuff is often the stuff leading up to the interview, while people are getting prepared for the interview and setting their sort of public face on. Or the bits before, like we see in other shows where he's got the clips before Bill Clinton is on the news, where he's picking his teeth or something like that, or looking shifty. So you always have those little bits of revelation from the unwitting subject that he likes to focus on.
Do you think it's fair to say, though, Simon, that as Curtis goes on, as we've watched him develop, we're going right back to the start now, that he does get more mannered as time goes on? He's more kind of, I mean, he's definitely got his own style.
Yeah.
But those hallmarks that we're talking, like the contrapuntal sound, those little moments off camera that he catches, the surprising jump cuts, like last week when, we went from scenes of brutality in the Congo with that music on the top of it, and then flicking back to people playing PlayStations, that it's the sudden shift of the what you're actually seeing on the screen. So these are all like Curtisisms, but how many of them are there right at the start? Be an interesting thing to go back.
We will see some. Certainly the way he sets up his vox pop shots, and again the way he lets it run long, so that just people's character starts to flood out of them in a very interesting and amusing way, especially with this film. And you just realize the sort of you'll see, but it's what a different society we were, where people were kind of not were much less filtered in a way, but they were still kind of very observant and considerate of each other. In terms of their manner of approach, but you see this wonderful tendency to try and keep things light and amusing that people seemingly don't have anymore. You can't sort of say these sorts of things or do these sorts of things because you're constantly triangulating around people's sensitivities now.
Well, let's get that up. Talking about a bit of nostalgia, I love seeing this as well. When you see it, just before we start this, I've been thinking recently. I have a little one; she's 5 years old now, and at no point in her life is she going to kind of watch TV as we watched it. Right, so she's going through a little phase at the moment of watching this bloody film Moana 2 over and over and over again, but everything's on demand. Right, and everything she's ever watched has been on demand. So there is no conception of the schedule. There's no conception of waiting for things to be on. There's no conception of just television as it used to be. And I find that psychologically interesting. I wonder how it impacts everything else. Like, because I mean, I remember going through the TV guide, circling things. I mean, if you missed the show, or if you were out or something, that was it. You missed it unless you set the tape to record back in the day. And in a way, you kind of had to be there,
Yes. The breakdown of linear time as a kind of emotional regulation mechanism. You can tether yourself to schedule, order, regularity, other kinds of fixed concepts where they don't define you, but they give you a tether to be able to observe reality against. And I suppose in a great deal of the project of the online right, as Matt Goodwin sneeringly calls us, is to recognize some of those, the importance of some of those tethers that allow a being like a child to form. They don't come out fully sort of diagnosing reality as organisms. They have to sort of work it out. So you have to give them these yardsticks against which to measure themselves against.
But I often wonder how much knowledge, how much stuff do you just pick up through osmosis? Right. I mean, just because like it's on, it's kind of in the background. It's just like you happen to catch something. You watch the Attenborough nature documentary that comes on, or you're waiting for your favorite show to come on, and maybe this is on in the middle, so you happen to catch the Adam Curtis documentary or something. That can't happen in the on-demand culture.
Yes.
You'll never go out of your way to select, I don't know, watching something like Open All Hours or something.
Yeah, and that in itself is a thing where you're tested against something. The idea these days of immediate self gratification, the algorithm repeats back to you the things you already like, instead of the exposure to the thing which mum and dad watch and everybody watches it collectively, and you process that as part of the fabric of how you perceive reality. I mean, a lot of us as children, we formed our version of reality based on how it was processed through television. So television, as I was saying on a proper horror show stream recently, becomes a kind of folklore, in the absence of communities which have organic, let's say, folklore based in agrarian communities, or even in urban communities. As the Industrial Revolution takes hold, the folklore now comes pre-processed to us through the prism of ideology. If we go to our Althazar, we were constantly trapped in it. And we make those images of history for a great deal of us through the images of television. For me, I mean, I have very clear memories of parts of the 1970s, but I also have to recall that a lot of them are made through television. And then as I process that as a projection of what reality was like, there's a bit of dissonance, because some of the reality was quite different. The 70s presented on the television today, you'd think it's people in sort of, I don't know, big collars and flowery shirts and flares, being groovy. And of course, a lot of the 70s I remember was quite, grim and dark, and, shops boarded up, and the smell of beer and stale fags everywhere. It was a different thing, but it was a lived reality that, to use a terrible phrase, a lived experience.
I just think even on an even more fundamental level, though, just knowledge of stuff, just general knowledge. Like, I just wonder how much stuff I picked up just happened to, like, I don't know, it's a boring night, not a lot on. I happened to watch Wicker's World or Clive James or something, and you just pick up stuff.
Yeah.
Like a lot of stuff, and you just won't do that.
Yes.
If you're on demand, it's just not going to happen.
And you picked it up processed through the thoughts of adults as well, which is a different thing. Whereas now everything is about, well, we have to come to their level as children or teenagers and kind of form a sort of patronizing framework of how we think they think, and then present it back to them. And I guess if what we do has a sort of virality or a quality of engagement that's enough, then we know we're on the right path. But it is very much that, the way I used to absorb television or radio sort of back as a child was much more you were aspiring upwards to what the adults were trying to tell you, rather than looking at a reflection of your own behavior as a teenager or a child.
Yeah, that's true.
So when you think about, when I think about the war, I think about listening to Laurence Olivier narrating The World at War, and a kind of a gravitas, let's say, in dealing with history. Whereas now, history, the way it's processed for popular television is much more about, CGI graphics of armies, a few reenactors looking miserable in a field somewhere.
Who's that guy? Dan Brown.
Dan Snow.
Dan Snow.
Yes. and they're trying to make it kind of visceral for you, in a sense. Whereas I think the old sort of forms of history were much more sweeping. I mean, The World at War takes a much more of an approach like one of your old, military guy books, like Hilton or Mackinder, talking about the big movements of history, which is in a sense what Curtis is trying to return to as well, the big story arcs. I
mean, I talked about this a bit when we were watching Oceans Apart with David Dimbleby. You can say, well, David Dimbleby was a liberal, but I kind of like, they were an anchor, those sorts of guys. And there was a moment where they were all replaced with like guys who were a bit cool, like Brian Cox. Like, everybody had to be like, oh, look at this guy. He's a physicist, but also he's a rock star.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not like Dimbleby,
Yeah.
Or like just an old, middle-aged, slightly sarcastic BBC man. I'd love those guys to come back,
More sort of headmasterly and dismissive, and keeping you in check. Whereas Brian Cox is just like, oh right, okay, you can have a magisterium of knowledge and have long hair and just wander around going, it's amazing all the time, which is all.
Yeah, I mean, it started to happen like when Question Time, when Dimbleby was still there doing Question Time, but they had to have Russell Brand on. or they had to have like fucking Noel Fielding on. And it's like, all right, yeah. What do you think, Noel? Sausages. I mean, why did they do that? Why do they do it? You know. Anyway, it's very annoying. So let's carry on. So in a way, I'm still always trying to get back to that moment of like 1991, where it's like pre MasterChef makeover, where it's like even before Lloyd Grossman was doing MasterChef, it was that that kind of was he an Australian guy? Anyway, let's carry on.
I just wanted to say, it has been remarked though that Adam Curtis himself kind of continues that. Well, it's been this, his presenting this, his narration style has been described as patrician, right?
Yes,
which is a little continuation of the likes of Dimbleby and the posh shows.
Because the first time you hear
posh, and he's quite well born, isn't he? And he's tied in with state institutions.
Not quite. One of the things Curtis talked about was going to the BBC and being aware that he was sort of sneered at somewhat by the older, there were slightly more patrician filmmakers in the BBC. And one thing he talked about was, there was a kind of wave of people like him, the clever suburban boys, as he calls them, who come in and start to give a bit more of a, and he's in that sort of post-punk period as well. I've mentioned before, he was at school with people like the Gang of Four and the Mekons, all these kinds of sort of slightly more disruptive, elements of the art music scene of the late 70s, early 80s. So yeah, there's certainly a thing of, as you say, at the same time, there is a sort of jarring thing because immediately as he talks, he has a patrician voice of quiet authority.
Yeah, he's got that confident, natural, confident calm,
Yeah, but he has that whimsy and that mischievous side as well, which he likes to kind of.
But what he doesn't have, which is also a kind of a slight irritation, Broomfield has it more, and it's hard to put your finger on. But there's a kind of like socialist left style of like British realism that was a thing in the 70s and even the 80s, like your typical World of Action half-hour documentary, which had a bit of an agenda there. It's kind of a bit more worthy, and Curtis doesn't has much less of that. It's very toned down in his work compared to that kind of the sort of documentary that who was that toothy feminist who was always on things?
Janet Street Porter.
Yeah, the sort of documentary that Janet Street Porter would be a talking head on.
Yes.
That sort of thing.
There was always that sort of element in documentaries of j'accuse. You were being made to be subjected to something, and then the director and the camera were sort of prodding you and going, "Look at this. Do you feel guilty about this? Do you feel bad about this? Then vote Labour."
Do you feel bad about her teeth? Is that your fault? Like, vote Labour for a better dentistry.
Well, I mentioned Porter because she's got. They all affected, or they had slightly more regional accents than your typical BBC patrician. And Street Porter, in my view, was the kind of on the vanguard of the regionalization of the accents.
Yeah, and bringing in a sort of a mock working class element to it as well. When you realise, these were people who probably went to, I don't know, the Camden School for Girls or Haberdashers' Asks or something like that, where it was really quite middle class people, but they toned it down for the telly, got some funny big red glasses on, spiky hair, and suddenly they were, speaking to the people.
So somehow I imagine Birchall was around those scenes as well. We were talking about Birchall. Yeah.
And then Jenny Eclair, do you remember?
Jenny Eclair, a classic figure from these sorts of scenes. Exactly, Jenny Eclair. In fact, the best lampooning of those guys was from my favourites, Lee and Herring, in the 90s. They actually sent them up quite a lot with they were actually very good at making fun of 80s left wing kind of scene in general. But anyway, let's go back to the 1982 now and take a trip shopping in London, in Oxford Street. Ramona Lones, specially selected as the cigar today, by the way.
This is very old school, isn't it? This is lovely.
2 hours before opening time at Selfridges, the biggest shop in the West End of London.
No, that's not Curtis's voice, is it?
No, I don't know who's narrated this one.
At this time of the day, Selfridges is like a small village about to wake up. Last year, 3 of London's big stores closed down. Selfridges has soldiered on since 1909 and employs 3,000 people. Staff have to be at their posts ready for the off by 10 to 9. A hard slog for some, but a labour of love for supervisor Vic Yates.
I've been working at Selfridges for 17 years. I came here as an assistant in the menswear section, and from the first day, I fell in love with the place. The excitement of serving the customers, the bustle behind the scenes.
They put it on with a sponge, which was about that big. It was massive. It's like a bath sponge.
Pause a second.
Before the doors open,
That chap just there, Vic. I mean, I would just say this was a time when being openly gay was not so common. So, But yeah, he seemed to fit in with the female retail staff quite well.
Yeah. There's another interesting thing about him, though, isn't there? I mean, for American viewers, it may seem like he was talking in a very posh accent, but to a British ear, you can tell he's probably a Londoner.
I was thinking that.
He's kind of this is a thing somebody was talking about on Twitter recently. There was a bit of a thread about back in the time where it's a bit of a cliche, but your British Bobby, you might sort of talk like this, oh, excuse, can I see your license, please, sir? He would have a sort of get out of the car, please, Sterling Moss, and it would be often be working class people who sort of done a kind of a cod voice of authority accent.
Yeah.
I'm not mocking this. It's this thing of it was the sort of the sergeant roles in workplaces. The kind of people who had to sort of rally the troops. They were often working class boys and girls from the East End who adopted the manner and the accent sounds of the middle class and the upper class. And it's kind of a coding to give them a sort of an authority. But you see this in people like, I mean, an example I can think of is someone like Kenneth Williams. If you go and look at interviews of Kenneth Williams, again, he was from a rough East End sort of background, but he looks incredibly sort of his chameleonic sort of voice, upper class. But
yeah, he seems to have one foot in the upper class sort of thing.
Yeah.
He?
Yeah, and there was a lot of this. I mean, Vivian Stanshall, who used to sing with the Bonzo Dog Band, you look at his dad, he's a sort of big, strapping East End guy, and he's this kind of little weedy chap who talks with a sort of upper crust voice. But they learned to put these things on. They learned to, lubricate their way in society and become interesting through these things. And so you don't see that thing of there's the London accent that's not just the Cockney accent, but it's this thing of moving yourself into another class bracket because you're a transitional kind of person. You do business, with the princes and the paupers. Yeah.
Kenneth Williams, as a kind of a veteran of old musical and stuff, would always have a moment in the interview or whatever, if you watch him for long enough, where he drops back into his Cockney, for a bit or whatever, but also as a nod and a wink to the audience to say, "Look, I'm still one of you." Type thing as well.
And when he was reading Just Williams stories, I mean, he did loads of different voices, and most of them were common, and it really worked because it just came naturally to him.
Yeah, but I want to stress, I don't think this is ridiculous or mockable.
No.
I think it was just a part of British culture at a time, and you don't get it so much anymore. I mean, even myself, I flattened my accent out from my regional accent from the northeast. My regional accent is much more, it's similar to the sort of territory that Morgoth is in, and I flattened it out in order to, be able to just move a bit more easily without my accent becoming an issue, And some people would say, "Oh, that's a bit cowardly, that is," or something. You're not being authentic. And I just say, "Oh, bollocks, I don't care." And it allowed me to speak to people without them making assumptions about me.
The guy we just seen as well, I think he was evincing some real real love for where he works
Yeah.
as well. Not necessarily about the customers, as he said, but
Yeah.
you do get an impression immediately that he's quite happy there. He really is quite happy.
Yeah.
I also, I guess, flattened my accent, if you want to put it that way. I mean, the thing is, Simon, is that again, it's the difference between the American listening and any Brit listening. Any Brit listening kind of knows I'm Welsh, right? They wouldn't, like, nobody would say, "Oh, well, that guy's posh," but to the American ear, it all sounds the same, right?
Yeah.
But if you listen long enough, you'll be able to know, well, this guy's clearly from Wales originally. But for me, I always thought from the town I grew up in, it was a choice that people made to accentuate their Welsh accent because they wanted that to be their thing, or they wanted to fit in with a particular crowd or whatnot. I always felt it was more of a choice where I grew up than in some other places, because I grew up in a little seaside town that didn't have, like, people didn't have like broad valley accent there. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, because I've had this argument with my brother, because I've had about authenticity and so on, and I'm like, no, your accent is the one that's put on. My voice is the authentic one. You're the one who chose to be more Welshy. Right?
Yeah.
Because if you listen to my brother, he speaks with a very broad Welsh accent. I'm like, you did that because you wanted more mates or whatever.
Well, there is a thing of, you see it in this film, of social role play. I've mentioned before, I knew a guy who was a warrant officer in the SAS, and he was Welsh, and he, when you talked to him, he had a kind of quite flat sort of English provincial accent, but he would tell me that when he wanted something off the officers, he wanted to get some resources out of them or something to set something up, he would say, I would put the Welshness on a bit more, because Welshness sort of passed in the military for sort of byword of being a bit thick or something. So he could sort of induce pity by becoming more Welsh. Oh, would you help me out, sir? That kind of, oh, if you don't mind. It was sort of like a peasant act, like playing under the Lord. So your regional accent can be kind of instrumentalized as a sort of social currency.
All right, let's carry. What about you, Horace? Where's your accent from specifically?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought everyone knew. No, that's good. The Thames Estuary.
I mean, in my mind, I would have had you from around there, but just want to double check,
Cosmetics are called to order. It's a bit like being back at school, with the headmistress awarding points and prizes to girls who do well.
All right, ladies. Good morning, everyone. Gosh, it is warm this morning. Once again, we're going to do our winning house for the month of April. We have, in actual fact, something else this morning, because on Tuesday we had what I consider to be a very big sale in the department. Now, it was from a house that really had to work very, very hard to achieve this sale. And it was the baby of the team that actually made the sale.
Sorry to interrupt again. Is it still there, Selfridges?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's still there, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
and still...
It's in prime place on Oxford Street. It is one of the best retail locations in the world.
Does it have a little restaurant on the top of it?
Yes.
No. Yeah,
yes.
I think I've eaten in that restaurant. I remember.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's like a boat. It's weird.
Yeah. I've got some interesting stats later on. We can talk about Selfridges, but interestingly, it's around the same complement of people as it was in 1982, around 3,000 people on the staff, which is quite a lot. I mean, that's roughly the complement of a US aircraft carrier today.
That's a huge staff for one shop. Wow.
Therefore, to see...
Sorry, I was just going to say, I would guess they've probably got a massive online operation now. Anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense. That would make sense. Yeah. Although they're still, I mean, Oxford Street is still busy. I mean, Harrods keeps on going. It's always packed in there. So they must get a lot of tourist trade through, just people going to London. It's a thing to do, isn't it?
I used to, I've been to London to go to Selfridges on a couple of occasions. It's it's perfectly located on Oxford Street as well. It's just, you couldn't be better.
Yeah.
Sarah, wherever she might be on Rubenstein. We say thank you very much indeed, Sarah. Absolutely fabulous.
Hello there, good morning.
Hello.
Behind the scenes, sometimes, of course, we relax and show our true selves. But to the public, no, you can never show your true self. You can be honest, but you must act for their benefit to show them or make them feel that they are welcome. So, okay, you've come out of the bed that day the wrong side, and why should you inflict it upon them? You know, they don't want this. They come in for a bit of entertainment.
Pause. Great thing there about a culture of consideration, which I'm going to sound like the old fart again, but which we kind of don't have anymore. This idea that you can master your mood so as to not inflict it on people and immiserate them, whereas we have a very projective culture now where your mood kind of gets translated through the sort of social justice discourse into a sort of stick to hit people with. The interesting thing he said there about you can't show your true self. Just remind ourselves of when we looked at the century of the self, and the first episode, you had those sort of Austrian aristocratic women saying, if you were a lady of the manor in the 19th century, it was so repressed that you couldn't just, tell your maid how you were feeling or go into the village and express yourself, and she says, it would be like prostitution, so that consciousness of how you deploy the self, you never show your true self. But it's a performance with a benign character that he's talking about.
Do you know who needs to hire that guy? Currys.
They need lots of him. They need several of him, right?
She'd be good as well, though. She's another kind of archetype, the sort of the female NCO. She'd whip Abdul into shape, wouldn't she? I mean, she's great.
I have consideration for the chat, Simon. Yeah. You remember yesterday I was in a good mood, right? So when I did my office hours, briefly. Dan Tubbs wrote on Twitter, "You'll only catch AA in a good mood like this about twice a year." And what I did yesterday is I just before I came on air, I had a walnut whip from Marks and Sparks, a salted caramel walnut whip.
Very much vintage with this piece, yeah.
Well, I thought, well, maybe it'll work again if I have a walnut whip just before I come on air. Maybe I'll just ride that sugar high long enough to not be a miserable sod for like an hour or something, So in a way, I'm considering the audience, not bringing my mood into their life.
I think your reaction is a normal reaction to an abnormal world.
I would just say one other thing about the guys we're watching here as well. I think there is a bit of a difference in how people regard retail, as in some people would say that if you work in the same shop for 17 years, 30 years, whatever, it's a bit sad or it's a bit limited or a bit small horizons, dim horizons sort of thing. These guys obviously did not think that. They obviously actually take some pleasure and pride in what they're doing. Retail is not.
That's the great thing as well. Britain has become a place where there is a shame about working in service of other people, and I don't see anything wrong with that. That would facilitate and lubricate society in a. I keep using the word lubricate. Sorry, but you know what I mean. It would make life so much better if there was a sense of duty to others that's just there by the nature of your job.
Why is it though that this kind of figure? What was that show? Are You Being Served?
Are You Being Served?
Yeah, like the guy, like the old tailor, the guy with the measuring tape and so on. That seemed more like a proper job, whereas like Bintu works in Next doesn't seem like a proper job.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like I don't know what the difference is.
Well, nobody knows nothing about nothing now, do they? When you go into a shop,
Yeah, exactly. Did you remember when I went to HMV? I was looking for Hammer horror film. What's Hammer horror? Have some pride in your work.
I mean, this is where you got your four Zoomers thing, isn't it? It's just your daily life. You're feeding back.
I'm guessing also that retail became less well paid than it was back in '82. Like I'm guessing it's the least amount of money they can pay you because it's just ever increasing pool of people to employ from, and also
did money go further?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I mean, that guy may have been supporting a wife and a child on his salary. That's quite believable. Like these people were, at least keeping a home on their own from just working full time in retail. Also, I think another thing in retail that I experienced was just that I don't know what you call it, but some sort of like globo homo element crept into it, where it's just everyone American practices like talking about we're a family here and all this like embarrassing. Well, how do you feel about your job, or can you assess your performance over the last few months, and all this twaddle that just does not apply. I don't think in terms of that. From my experience of working in jobs like this, it's just more and more unnecessary rubbish was pasted over the. Whereas some people are just naturally good at this kind of job; they don't need much coaching.
Let's not forget as well. These were the days of, I had to work hard for that house. I worked 6 months in Selfridges to save up for that, as opposed to, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, you could actually have a house as a milkman at one point.
Yeah.
Whereas now, nobody can afford a house, even if you've got a top salary or whatever. So.
And you see, there's the other thing is that it's the residual form of social organization in these workplaces is basically a military one. You have sort of these NCO people sort of shunting people around, but giving them, not bullying them, just keeping them in order, and that, this is an era where there are people who could well have easily served in the war who are running these, like, your senior positions, like the chap we saw there. They could have easily been around at the end of the war.
And it probably pervaded. I mean, we're talking about Kenneth Williams. If you remember back to my Carry On thing, all of those guys had served.
Yeah.
Right? Or lots of the Carry On guys had been, and it was run like a military thing. So it must have pervaded at every level of society, that kind of discipline from those years, then carried through into peacetime.
And now the emphasis on the character is more that we're seeing these people in society now where their story is all about how they are recuperating from war and the trauma of war. Whereas those guys, of course, I mean, you'd barely have known that they escaped from Colditz 3 times, or flew bombing raids over Europe.
I also feel that the relationship, the customer relationship, how often do you go to a business now and there's this big sign saying, do not be abusive towards the staff, right? It completely reverses. It's like, oh, now the onus is on you to be nice to them.
Yeah. And they're saying, we know we're rubbish. We know we're going to annoy you.
Selfridges is just like a theatre. 10 to 9, we're waiting for the public to arrive. The scene is set, everything for the performance of when the people will arrive in at 9 o'clock.
Can I just say, I've just had a little flashback. When I started my working life at the age of 16, I worked in Summerfield in the bakery department. Okay, I've told this story before. Baked little often, do you remember? And I baked shitload once. Right, that was my. But anyway, I remember that because you had to be there at 6 a.m. in the bakery. The store didn't open till 8, and every single morning, and this was in the 90s, there would be people queuing, waiting to come in. Right, already, like the hordes would be waiting to come in at 8, and there'd be like a little mini celebration when the store was opened. It would be like, oh, right, because I mean, before everybody comes, they blast music out across the supermarket, and then it'd be right, we're going to open, and there'd be like a little celebration, and they also did the same thing at store close as well. If you ever worked, it was a very strange thing. I just remembered that. Kind of
what form of celebration was it? How did it take place, this celebration? What did they do?
I can't. I'm trying to remember, but there was like a cheer, it'd be like, oh, we're opening, and there'd be like a cheer, and then it'd like, oh, the doors would open, and the old people, the people would start coming in and stuff. Like everybody, I wonder if they still do that. It's just I hadn't thought about that for many years, but very strange. Okay, let's carry on.
We've got over 3,000 people inside who are waiting for the doors to open so they can present this show to the people. Not only to take their money, to present this show to the people when they come in.
Nearly 100,000 people pass through the doors every day. Each customer spends between £4 and £5. It's a common complaint these days that you can never find an assistant when you want one. Here, however, in the largest cosmetics and perfumery department in the world, it's more a question of trying to avoid them.
Hello. Would you like to try some Jill? Oh, stop and have a spray.
Voiceover is a journalist called John Pittman, by the way.
Right.
Simon.
Right.
If you're wondering.
Just to comment on the values there, spending about £5 a day, that's roughly £20 in today's money.
It's not a lot, is it?
No, but it sort of shows an intent, doesn't it? People go there for a certain type of product, which is not too cheap. You might want something that's a decent amount of money to pay for something. whatever it might be.
You don't have time?
No,
Why is that?
I'm busy for an appointment.
Well, have one of the cards. There you go. Okay?
Karen, what exactly is the job at the moment?
Well, it just really involves, at the moment, we've got a promotion going on. It just involves going out and spraying customers and telling them what the promotion's all about and trying to entice them to buy the product, really. That's all it is. We just go out and spray people.
And you can wear it one way, or you can wear it two ways, which is in fashion at the moment. You've got no worry about travelling with this one.
Gentlemen's hats, a distinguished domain on the first floor, ruled for the past 20 years by Mr. Parker. Are you a pushy?
Not one bit. That's bad salesmanship. If you push a customer into buy something, you'll only fetch it back the next day, and you give them a cash refund. That's not business. So therefore, you see the.
He should be standing there barking, "Gentleman's hat, buy it now!" If you do it enough times, people will cave and buy it. But maybe it's a different approach.
Customer, you understand the customer, and fix them up as best as you can. But if you push, that's bad salesmanship. I've never pushed and I never will.
Pause.
We've got a promotion on today. If you...
Just that line. Oh, go on.
Foundations of retail. Buy it now. Sorry, go on.
I never pushed and I never will. You'll find this coming up a few times in this documentary, that the lines that come out of people's mouths are just like something from a carry-on. You know.
It's also a marked contrast to if you've ever been on holiday, especially in like a place with third worlders around. That's a very different approach to trying to get you to buy stuff. Have you ever been in a place where they're especially aggressive in trying to hawk their items to you? It's something we hate. Something I absolutely hate.
We've been in a place where there's loads of Indian tailors, and they've learned their chat-up lines in like 10 different languages, and they try them all out as you walk past because they don't know which country you're from. That's a thing I've encountered in certain third world countries. Yeah, if you do foundations of retail, I think you should do it just for Britain. Don't do it.
Yeah, it's a very different. I mean, even in America, they go for the hard sell a bit more, don't they?
I read a book, an American book on learning sales techniques. It was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm English.
Spend £12 with deal. We're giving you a lovely gift free. Giving you a soap on a rope and a bag free, and that's when you spend £12. Would you like to try some as well? Would you like to try some aftershave? We're giving a gift away today when you spend £12. No? So really, obviously them two weren't any good at all, but it was worth spraying them.
Not yet.
Not yet. Would you like to try some? No? You can get some people that can be quite offended by it. That's why you always ask somebody before you spray them. Otherwise, if you just spray them, if they've got a suit on or something, you can get quite offended by it. So you have to be careful.
Do you like wearing hats yourself?
No, I'm too conscious.
What do you mean?
Well, I'm just not the type to wear a hat or cap. I've tried and I don't like it.
Maybe you shouldn't be saying that if you're
Well, there you are. There you are. You asked me.
So,
Is this a good location for...
well, no, not really. We were discussing the other day that it isn't really because, as you know, it's right near the ladies' knicker department, which really, you don't get that many men walking through the ladies' knicker department, as you can imagine. That's a bit kinky. It's Jewel by Christian Dior. Have you tried this one before?
I have.
You have? Do you like it?
It's nice.
Would you like to try some?
Pause. What would you say that gentleman is? Is he Persian, possibly, or
let's go back.
Something about him that's.
As you know, it's right near the ladies' knicker department.
Are they suggesting that he was kinky? This guy, because he was walking through the knicker
editor's craft, isn't it?
Which really, you don't get that many men walking through the ladies' knicker department, as you can imagine. That's a bit kinky. It's Jewel by Christian Dior. Have you tried this one before?
I have.
You have? Do you like it?
It's nice.
Would you like?
He could be. I couldn't say for certain because he didn't say enough. But he's certainly from that part of the world, isn't he?
I noticed how polite and pleasant most of the people were. They all give her a smile, if nothing else. A lot of people would just blank, wouldn't they? Just be like, "You didn't say anything. I didn't hear you."
Yeah.
Try some, sir. Some people just ignore you. It can be quite humiliating at times.
Of course, you wouldn't be saying that now. You don't get many men walking through the knicker department. Not in 2025, love. They're all there trying it on. And that's just the Tory MPs.
I wonder where she is now. She's quite brassy. I like her.
In hairdressing, Gordon has a regular, very fussy about his eyebrows.
Horus, I see you in the chat. Press 1 in the chat if you would. I spotted.
I didn't want to pause for that. I didn't think that was worth.
Oh, unbelievable.
she's quite saucy. She's
yeah.
Character.
Yeah.
And Humphrey has to cope with a reluctant first-time customer.
Where's Susie? Where's Susie?
Enough. Enough. I can't see a damn thing you like on without my glasses. You always forget that, don't you?
No, you can't see them because of your glasses. They're normally pretty petrified, so... Oh, don't be silly, we haven't got any stuff. What do you think this is?
Well, bloody well find some then.
Oh, look what I got.
Right, are you happy?
No.
How would you describe the customers? What sort of a cross-section is it?
Marvellous, very good cross-section. You've got everything from kind of kids of 15 who are punky to sort of mature businessmen of X age.
Do you get difficult ones?
Of course you get difficult ones, but it's the difficult ones that drive you mad, that give you the adrenaline to be nice to the nice ones.
What's the most difficult one you've got, do you reckon?
Most difficult... The most difficult ones I get rid of.
Well, if you want to look after the public, you should come over to me and not stay over there.
I've finished you, Mr.
Well, I don't
Lowtry.
consider you then.
What would you like me to do now?
I'd like to put some more eau de cologne on and do the job properly. I wonder why I come to you, to be insulted.
I mean, this is great that you're seeing a sort of level of social resilience in the way that these people employ banter, which, again, I don't know if you can do that these days because you just get people sort of staring at you,
Or you just can't be sure how they're going to react, right? A lot of people would react well, but you just can't be sure.
Yeah.
A lot of people do want that banter. They do remember it, people of older age, but and they know it's lost, but there's just laws and stuff to consider, aren't there?
Well, because it involves a certain amount of risk in the exchange, doesn't it? That's the thing that people are sort of wary of, really. That you might say something and then you test the person and how they respond.
Surely another element of a higher trust society.
Yeah, you determine character.
No, I don't wish to be politically incorrect here, gentlemen, but
have you
this
noticed
chap
something?
here with the curlers in. Why does he need curlers then? I thought the hair was curly already.
Is it?
Yeah.
I can't possibly answer that. Yeah. He just wants a different kind. He wants a perm. He doesn't want his natural hair. He wants a perm.
Yeah.
He's going for the Prince. He's going for the Prince look. Is that it? It was 1982. So Prince was probably around.
No, he's going for the Priscilla. What's her name from 40 Towers? He's going to have a blue rinse after.
All right. And you can do that, can you? Because I thought there's I just don't like. How does the? Okay, so I always remember that they have their own barbers, don't they? There's like a black barber.
Yeah. He's going to bleach it. He's going to dye it a normal British blonde, brown colour, and then blue rinse it. His perm.
I see.
Every time I come here.
Do you like a bit of aggravation? That's why.
Be aggravated by you. It's
you
not
get
what
driven
I like.
mad by people all the time, so you just come in and drive me mad.
You're always the same.
That's one of my
Thank
charms,
you for the
Mr.
coffee.
Lowtry. I don't
How much
change.
do I owe you for the coffee?
Nothing.
Stan, the goods liftman, who's been operating behind the scenes for 25 years. You don't get to see a lot of daylight, really, do you?
No, every door the door opens, I think I'm going to have some bread and water or something.
Okay, don't be shy.
Don't look miserable like that.
Have you ever wanted to be promoted to the to the big stuff.
Oh, they
outside.
tried to get me on there, yeah. No way, I want that. No. We have enough with the staff without customers. Okay, come on.
Man who knows his place in the world.
He just doesn't like people either. Works in the basement.
This is an archaic thing, obviously. When's the last time you saw a man-operated lift? But when I was a kid, probably something like early 90s, I think about 92 or something, I do remember being in some big grand old shop in London. I don't believe it was Selfridges. And they did have old-fashioned metal gate with a porter elevators,
This may interest you as an Austrian economics fan, Horace, but remember reading that the lift operators were a heavily unionized industry, which is why they made all the lifts all automatic. But up until, I don't know if they're still going, but certainly 5 or 6 years ago, pre-COVID, it was one of the best paid jobs you could get in America. Because like the union still goes, but they only operate in like a few distinct locations. Maybe it's the same here. Maybe this guy is like a fully paid up union member and in the lift operators guild or whatever.
That is often the explanation for archaic practices surviving long after you'd think they would.
Another one was the cinema projector. That was another unionized job that I think the last one retired like couple of years ago, something like that. It's all digital now, but that was another union thing.
Smile as you come on.
Hello there. Hello there.
What you got here? What's this?
Cosmetics.
Cosmetic.
Perfumery.
Perfumery, it's in there.
The biggest money makers in the store, though.
Yeah.
All of the ground floor.
All the ground floor. All the different things, the different flavors. Strawberry, raspberry, banana, apple.
Yeah.
All the flavor here. Okay. Haji here, all the lot of flavor.
See me finish, Len.
Yeah, see you.
How do you describe your life?
Lots of ups and downs.
People who work at Selfridges are supposed to love it, Stan.
Well, it depends how long you've been here, doesn't it? And what sort of a job you're doing as well.
Ever had a row with any of the bosses?
Oh, lots of them, yeah. In the past, because they keep changing the governor stuff.
The latest governor, Mr. Stevens, who likes to be where the action is.
I find this probably the most stimulating, exciting spot in the store because everybody goes past. The world goes past you here. I've met people from all over the world that I know who pass in this particular spot. Secondly, it is the great hub of the store as far as traffic flow and probably to me the most exciting part of the store on the ground floor.
Do you find yourself counting the pennies or the pounds as people...
Oh, all the time, because what I'm really interested in is the number of people carrying Selfridges bag as they leave the escalator. And I think to myself, if they've gone around this total store with all the merchandise in it, and they're not carrying a bag, why not?
Information has been received that pickpockets are operating in the Oxford Street area now. Please keep your handbags and wallets safe.
Somebody on this counter? Make sure we're looking after this side, though. Hello, Doreen. All right?
Miss Brogan, head of cosmetics.
Girls, don't be talking, please.
Some reason I just get the impression that she's a mega bitch. I don't know what.
Yeah.
Something gives me that vibe. That's all.
Yeah.
She also, for some reason, reminds me of the typical candidate who do well on The Apprentice. Not Donald Trump's Apprentice, but Alan Sugar's Apprentice. It was usually a woman who looks a lot like with this build and frame and she's carrying that. Anyway,
very buttoned up sexuality, that kind of slightly. You don't want to tempt her ferocity.
Exactly. What was it? Ruth the Badger? The Badger. I remember. No, that's the one I'm thinking of. But anyway, let's carry on.
Don't lean on the counter, dear. It doesn't look very nice.
You bustle around this rather royally, don't you?
Oh, I hope not. No, I don't think royally, but I do bustle about, yes.
But I thought you had a nickname.
She reminds me of someone else, Simon. I didn't tell you about how pickleball went, did I?
Oh, yes. Give us the report.
I went to pickleball beginners. The lady there said, look, you're probably good enough to go straight in to the normal club. I went to the normal club, and it was run by an older South African lady whose manner is not a million miles away from this woman here.
Yeah.
Right. But she's older, but same sort of manner. And as I finished, I lost, we lost our game 12-10. And as I was just packing up my things, sweat coming down me, she just said, back to beginners, I think. And I just nodded my head.
Can you do the accent?
Walked away sadly. So yeah.
Did you say
remind?
Get back in your box, boy.
Yeah,
back to beginners for you.
Yeah, back to beginners. No, I mean they're very kind of blunt, the South Africans, aren't they? And this one was no exception.
I'd like to think he really tore off a strip, you know, and really gave you hell. That's good.
Remember, also there was a character in the Fast Show, the later seasons of the Fast Show, that was a woman who looked sort of this kind of dress, you know, this kind of role as well, and worked in perfume or cosmetics, and she was South African. And the joke, you know, the Fast Show was just the same joke every week, slightly varied. And the joke was always just that she insulted the people she was trying to sell the cosmetics to, you know, just saying, you need it, you look rough, whatever. But
for some reason, I can't stop thinking about the League of Gentlemen character who worked in the job centre. Anyway, let's carry on. Let's carry on.
Queen Mother. Yeah, sometimes.
See, look at you see those girls there. Over there, when you said you're not royal, they looked like you might be royal.
No, it's nice to know who's important, and we obviously all know who Miss Rogan is.
No. What's going on?
Makeup, is it as glamorous as it's supposed to be? Is it all?
Very.
Is it?
Yes, I think it's the nicest department to be in, don't you, girls?
That's right.
I think we're really very lucky. We all feel very fortunate. Of course, behind it all, there are a lot of great secrets, aren't there? All the smiling faces and the anxiety to help hide a lot of aching feet. But I think sometimes, you know, our own private sadnesses as well. But I think that's part of the wonderful thing about...
She didn't need to say that, because I could tell her smile isn't real. It's no
Yeah, but again, she's got that very cut glass accent as well. You know, this is, you know, the days of having matron on the ward. That's what this is.
I like that just in a brief sort of few minute long stand up interview, she's as candid as that. I like that.
Yeah, she just comes straight out with it. You know, this smile hides 1,000 nights crying and abject loneliness.
And interesting that girl didn't choose to mock the hierarchy in any way there. You know, we all know who Miss Brogan is.
Can't believe the chat are at it again. Press 1 if you would, etc. Bloody hell. Bloody hell.
These are the people who would have, you know, bought the kind of the Reader's Wives magazine, you know, 40, 50 years ago.
Cosmetics were more like show business than any other part of the store. We're on parade, aren't we, girls? You've got nobody on the front, Nikki.
Selfridges bag.
There's a lot of ones as well. It's that Tory MP all over again. Do you remember the one?
Yeah.
Do you mean Alicia Kearns?
Alicia Kearns. I made a video.
Alicia Kearns is fat though. I mean, this woman's not.
I made a video on Alicia Kearns, and half of the comments were wood.
Yeah.
And then, dark, sinister character that she is, she had the video copyright struck. Right? Because I'm not even kidding now. I showed a still image, right, on the screen of her at some LGBT rally, and the original photographer who owned the copyright of that photo had that individual still frame copyright struck. So I had to take the video down. That's how sinister Alicia Kearns is.
Yeah.
She didn't let my hit on her stand. So
she got her personal worm tongue to knife you.
But that didn't stop the chat lusting after old Miss Piggy. So,
Well, there's always that thing with the Tory women, isn't there? I mean, they're not necessarily kind of oil paintings and supermodels, but a Big Bum Penny and Big Bum Pretty, But it's like it goes back to the days even of like when John Major was having it away with Edwina Curry. There's always this kind of fetish for this conservative lady sexuality, isn't there?
the Dommy Mommy, I think.
Yeah,
The
they
kids call it,
imagine them in the
Simon.
corset and the boots and stuff, don't they? That's what they like. They're getting a good spanking from mummy.
Just want to highlight Hector Drummond in the chat said that in all seriousness, Alicia Kearns was an MI5 officer.
Yeah, exactly. And she's like, right, can't let this academic agent video stand. He is attacking directly my electoral tactics, tricking old people in the shires to, vote for me because I'll protect their pies, which is literally her campaign strategy.
And you think you may have lost it on Thursday? Oh, that's fine. Have you got a phone number, please?
Lots of pairs of tights. We've even got a nightie.
Do you mean tights that have been worn?
Oh, yes, sometimes you find them in bags where people have taken them out and changed them and then...
Sorry to go back to the old Tory sexuality again, but here is the image that shows you this dynamic in full. That is Kemi Badenoch's husband, Hamish Badenoch. And everything about that image tells you what we're talking about.
You see, his tie forms the lean-in line, doesn't it? That people put on these pictures. His whole spirit is leaning into hers, even though he's got his soy face on.
Dark dynamics, yeah.
Yeah.
...the floor, and nobody knows what's in it, so they bring it down to us. The nightie is new.
Jojoba. Yoyoba. Oh, that's fine.
We've had some things from the shops in Soho, but those we wrap up very carefully and we bury them in the rubbish. Nobody ever came back to ask for one.
Hello, here's a teddy bear. Oh, God, another one. Poor wee kid. What'll I call it? A teddy bear, I suppose. Yeah.
You always know who they've lost by when the person they lost turns up. You see, if it's a lady and she says, I've lost my husband, and he comes down and says, oh, you poor darling, have you had a long wait? Were you very upset? They're not married. And if he says, where the bloody hell have you been? They are.
Great observation.
She means that. It's no joke there, is there?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. She's familiar with the ways of the world. She looks like my English teacher, Miss Hodgson from 1984 in school, and she was a bit of a saucy one, I have to say, as well.
Oh my God, we're not doing Woods on Air as well now.
Unfortunately, this is going to happen. Yeah, they're going to take those glasses off in their minds, and they're going to ruffle her hair, and they're going to see something different from the rest of us.
You're speaking for the crowd there. You're not speaking for yourself, right?
Absolutely, yes. Okay. Far be it from my mind.
Okay.
She looks a lot like the local librarian who, when I was getting my dinosaur books as a kid, one of the librarians looked a lot like her. So.
I will say my English teacher did used to sit in the front of the classroom and let the boys look up her skirt.
Dear, oh.
Darkness.
I had a history teacher who used to sit on the desk with their legs crossed, and then every once in a while she done
just enough.
I mean, it was just blatant. And looking back, the thing is, those teachers were only like, we were 16, 15, 16. They were only like 22, 23, so they must have known what they were doing. Kind of bloody hell.
Can you say bloody hell on telly?
Perfect.
Claude, destined to star in the Christmas window display. He might not look very realistic now, but wait until he gets the full treatment from display manager Colin Graves.
So this camel, hopefully, if we can get someone to do it, is going to chew and to probably blink. It's just so that if you're looking at it, you can relax because it's doing all the things that a camel does. and none of those quirky or jerky, obvious animation tricks like swinging its head around too quickly or wagging its tail all over the place. So the problem we've got is that the cheap chew is like this, which is the way people chew. Camels, in fact, chew from side to side like this, and it's much more difficult to get an animation that goes on a horizontal plane than it is to get one that works on a vertical plane.
Will you settle for the cheap chew?
No, I don't think I will. I think we want a really expensive chew on this camel for Christmas. Otherwise, I think it will lose its credibility.
Perfect carry-on.
How is this a job?
Has that guy dyed his hair? Like, what? He's got two colours hair, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's very...
I remember it was 1982. I mean, there must have
kind of
been like...
Duran style.
That's
Frankie
it.
Goes to Hollywood around, or Pet Shop.
It's some pop star who's got that same hairstyle.
A bit early for the Pet Shop Boys, maybe.
Simon Le Bon had that kind of thing, didn't he? Like,
With Duran Duran around 1982.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, he probably would have been down the Blitz Club or something later on after work, I imagine. He has that look about him.
When were Dexy's Midnight Runners? No, I mean, it's all like 80s kind of blur for me.
Yeah. Sort of early, about 1980 onwards. I remember
Depeche Mode were around in 1982, weren't they?
Yeah,
they started about 1980, I think, or 81.
Depeche Mode were around and
doing their
maybe
journeyman
New Order.
work.
You had your Flying Pickets. So.
Yeah, New Order certainly around 81. I remember Blue Monday coming out. I remember Gino by Dexys coming out in 1980 as well.
When I was born, oh no, I shouldn't say that. That could give people my birthday. No, I'm not going to say it. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. I'm trying to remember some other bands who were around. I mean, I'd say remember, piece together.
Yeah.
When we're Visage.
Visage, yeah, sort of 81 when I think they did Fade to Grey, and around the same time that because Bowie was sort of hanging out, wasn't he? Was he hanging out with Steve Strange or something? And when he did Ashes to Ashes video with the clown and stuff, that was about the same period, 81.
You had that other band, Midge Ewer's band as well. They were big at that time, weren't they?
What, before Simple Minds or
Ultravox, was it?
Ultravox. Okay.
Ultravox, yeah. You see that they're allowed. What I'm saying is they were around earlier. In my mind, all of that stuff happens in the mid 80s, but actually they're around in the early 80s. All of those bands. So,
what am I talking about?
It's a marvellous idea just by folding. Roll it down 3 times, tie at the back into one fold. Tuck it down inside a jacket or a sweater. Rolling it over at the top, there's a blouse.
Pause. Sorry, that's nothing to do with the Palestinian protest, is it?
You tuck it in at the back. Take away from the front. Crossing it over, bring it on the top, there's a turban.
Selfridges has 21 acres of floor space, and by lunchtime the place is packed. But there is the odd sanctuary. This is a beauty therapist. Her real name is Miss Hustler, but many years ago a confused customer changed all that.
Client phoned up.
Just returning to that previous bit, she was showing people how to do the neckerchief or whatever it was, but she said you can also make it into a turban or whatever you want. And there was a couple of ladies watching who were wearing hijabs, right? Just want to say for the younger people watching, maybe if you're like 20, early 20s now, not all Muslim women used to wear hijabs. That was actually a minority. Most Muslim women used to have their hair out, or loads and loads. Hardly anyone in the whole of Britain was wearing niqabs or burqas or anything like that. That was virtually unseen. Maybe just like a couple of Saudi immigrants or something. I never saw a woman in a niqab or a burqa until the last 20 years. And hijabs were not the norm.
When did that become a thing to be like I'm Muslim and proud and I'm going to wear it as an empowerment symbol? Like that was weird.
It's
mid-90s, it feels like.
I think even later, but maybe. But I started seeing it, since September 11th and the war on terror, and also just the spread of Wahhabism, which is, like Saudi are allowed to spread Wahhabism everywhere around the world. And that is strict old fundamentalism, letter of the Quran and everything.
Mm. Yeah, the vision of people from the Middle East at this time, again, was your kind of comedy sheikh, with the sort of the sunglasses and the, and the keffiyeh on his head, but that's about it, really. Women didn't sort of have that kind of image.
And Maja Mahmood, that journalist, the fake sheikh.
Mm.
No, he would normally dress like a normal British person, probably, but he would sometimes dress up in that, the red and white tea towel and sunglasses or whatever. Yeah.
I hate to say this, but this image that we're looking at here reminds me of the Terry Gilliam film Brazil.
It's going to start stretching her face out. Yeah.
Something about that face doesn't look quite real. It looks like it's made of latex or something. But,
yeah.
She'd lived in the States, and she said, I can never remember whether her name is Hustler or Hooker. And unfortunately, she spoke to the boss, and so ever since, I'm Miss Hooker. And after all, it's an easy way to remember, isn't it? Clients remember that.
Yes, I suppose they do. I remember the days when I used to come here and sit on rocking horses as a child and have my hair cut. It was wonderful days.
It's a long time ago.
It was a long time ago, about 20 years, I think.
We used to have notices up outside in those days, silence is requested. And one day a lady came in and she said in a loud voice, oh, darling, do I need you today? My face is like a farmer's arse on a frosty night. She said it again for good measure. Hear everybody tittering all round the corridor. And people who would come in, I remember one lady, Lady Elizabeth, and she said, I've just been to the bank because I'm going out this evening. And she said, have a look in that parcel. I opened the parcel, and the most beautiful jewels, the ruby and diamond necklace and the earrings and the bracelet. And she said, put them on. And I put them on, had a lovely time. This wonderful array of jewellery. And another time a lady came in and she said, I have something beautiful in that brown paper bag. Took it out, it was the most gorgeous tiara, which Lady X had lent her for the wedding, her wedding. Beautiful thing, in the brown paper bag. Looked like a pound of apples.
Is Selfridges a sort of second home to you? I mean, does it
I suppose it is really. I've often thought about this, having been here for so long. It's like a background, isn't it? And I often wonder how, if at all, I lean on it. You know, I've often thought about it, but I've enjoyed it so much, and I do enjoy it, that just get on with it, you know.
The store postman averages 9 miles a day in the course of duty. His name is Morris, but he only answers to Norman because he's mad about Norman wisdom.
Pause. Just to say, this guy is great. This is he's the best character in this whole thing. He's fantastic.
The back shot already looks like something on a Monty Python or something. But...
Yeah.
What to do is cover all the eye with this.
Hello, girls. Afternoon, girls. Afternoon, girls.
You know, Norman Wisdom is famous for that film set in a
Trouble in Store.
Trouble in Store. He was always getting into trouble, wasn't he?
Yes, I.
Do you get into trouble?
I do at times.
What sort of thing?
I do things wrong, you know.
Do you ever get sent up to the bosses?
Yes, many of 3 times.
What for?
When I sang to a buyer here in the store.
Sang?
Sang for her. Gave her letters. Thank you. How dare you, she said, you sing to me. I'll ring Mr. Dowse. She did. Up I went. What's the idea, he said, singing to Mr. Dowse? Or singing to this woman in the umbrellas. I said, is it a crime? Don't sing to the woman. He clenched his teeth at me.
Did he?
Nasty man.
Were you like Norman Wisdom?
How is this person real, Simon?
He's like a Muppet or something, but made flesh. He's just incredible. Just his comic timing. He's brilliant.
Wisdom before.
Only since I came to the store.
So you've worked at it?
Yes, I've worked at it, all right. And I put my heart and soul into it.
Hang on.
All right, girls. Come and see me in my office sometime, will you? 2nd floor, no door.
How long do you think he'd last working in Selfridges today?
Oh, man. Come and see me in my office sometime. 2nd floor, no door.
That would be a second harassment case immediately, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Doesn't the no door thing make it like less threatening though? He's saying, yeah, I just hang about upstairs, when I'm having my lunch.
I mean, he just camps it up, for the laugh, and good on him.
Showing off the goods in swimwear on the second floor.
Christy. Let's go. Oh, quick. Okay.
Here's gone.
Calm down.
That was a woman in a niqab just there.
It was.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
In the centre of London and the West End, you would see Arabs, and sometimes a woman.
Saudi money.
As we saw in the Mayfair set, obviously.
Yeah.
Or if you go to, even if you go to the West End now, there's absolutely tons of them there.
Yeah.
What's that posh hotel?
Well, like Knightsbridge area is ridiculous. Knightsbridge,
that one.
Kensington
Dorchester.
area is crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, they're everywhere. You can just look at the number plates, and they're all in Arabic.
And much more ostentatiously, foreign, I guess, in their dress as well. Whereas now, I guess the thing is more to blend in with your your supercars, and you're buying the latest fashion rather than looking like you've come out of the Mayfair set.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. There's one. I tell you, the worst people for not trying to blend in at all, I would say, are the again what I referenced yesterday, Russian Grand Theft Auto chic, where they're just so rich that they're in they'll be in one of these places like wearing a shell suit or something, and just I've seen horrendous behavior from very rich Russians in places like that. Kind of like I always remember, I can't remember exactly where we were, but there was this clearly extremely wealthy couple where the guy was literally, he looked like he just walked out of Grand Theft Auto 4, and he had this he brought all these gifts for this woman, and it's ridiculous. He must have been like 30 gifts, like Dior, like you can imagine, like all of the top brands, perfumes, chocolates, and she didn't pay any attention. He clearly he was in trouble in some way, and he was trying to buy back her affection, and she was having absolutely none of it whatsoever. And then when dinner came, she didn't touch it at all and just had her face away. It's fascinating to watch. Fascinating.
Imagine being a billionaire and still ending up like that.
I know. It was like, mate, you're a billionaire Russian gangster and you're still simping out for this woman. She had him around it. She had him around his little finger.
You're imagining Medvedev, aren't you? In his
yeah, exactly. I imagine Medvedev's like that. Yeah,
swinging around the place. Yeah.
I have to say, though, I respected the game on that woman. She didn't flinch an inch, right? And this guy was it was clearly he must have spent, I don't know, 10 grand or something on this woman. She didn't move a muscle. We talk about frame. They talk about male frame and maintaining frame. That woman, I'm telling you, ladies, if you can be like her, maybe you'll get a simp like that Russian guy one day as well.
Slavic mating ritual. Just for people who are interested in the chat, the music is a piece called Trampolina, played by Russ Conway. Another jaunty Curtis piece to which you could arrange footage of massacres at your leisure.
try another double somewhere.
Would you like to try some? Excuse me?
But that is just my colour. It's so beautiful.
No, it is a beautiful thing. Yeah.
It really is. And you see, she is between these colours.
Is she?
The mother-in-law. So I got to have something that is totally, you know,
of course.
different.
Oh, yes, yes.
So, if you wouldn't mind.
Det kan man kalla det. Rather expensive.
You can't leave your handbag behind.
Well, I can't very well hold a handbag with the evening dress. Can you hold it? Give it to somebody. Okay.
Somebody. Jeanette.
They'll have the green dress. Yeah, but the trouble is that if this would have fitted, then I would have gone through anything to have got this opened up.
The alteration, we have to, of course.
I don't
make
mind
sure
how
that
much it costs if they can do it.
But I haven't had time to do it today. Yes, I haven't had time to do it today, you see. When I was up here earlier on, over there, I'll show it you tomorrow, Olive. You know my bedroom is green and white. The Horrockses have got a lovely cover and pillow slips to match. Oh, they're nice. And if they've got curtains, I thought...
Two innocent-looking housewives who are not quite what they seem. They're store detectives, part of a large team who operate from headquarters equipped with television cameras which can focus on shoppers in every department.
Ladies' dresses, ladies had a handbag stolen. Yeah. What are they after? They're nicking? Security. Do we know what they're wearing?
I don't know what the girls are wearing, no. Did Pam say where they were?
No, just two separate, I think.
Selfridges can lose up to £3,000 a day through shoplifting, despite the efforts of experienced detectives like Bronwyn.
When you spot it, what you think is a potential thief, then you look at their faces. And
Eat your heart out, Cagney and Lacey. These two.
These are great, this pair. That £3,000 then, by the way, is about £11,000 now. And these old girls, I mean, I imagine they were like in the SOE during the war or something like that. And, you know, this one here, I think she's packing something like a Desert Eagle in 5.0 caliber. Her friend has probably got a classic Colt 1911, you know, 45 ACP man-stopper.
Desert Eagle, like a huge handgun. Like
yeah.
Bigger than a head, right?
I think the Israelis developed it so you could shoot cartridges through engine blocks to stop vehicles, but people think it's like a flashy kind of big, massive piece. Anyway, I can imagine her pulling it out of her handbag and saying to somebody, you know, grab some sky, mother breath.
I like her name as well, Bronwyn. That's proper Welsh, that is.
Yeah.
We had a dog called Bronwyn once. Well, I say we, the family.
I think that's a pretty name.
Blodwyn. Blodwyn's a good Welsh name.
Blodwyn, that's as Welsh as you can get, really. Yes. Apparently that means white flower.
Very nice.
Blodwyn, yeah. Wyn is white.
see that the eyes are not interested in the merchandise on the counter there and then. And they're looking to the left, to the right, and over. And then you must forget their faces. And then you just watch their hands, because it's...
Again, how do you get this job? Right? I mean, Selfridges, they've got a guy employed to make a camel. And then also in their staff of 3,000, they've got this, you know, undercover detectives, store detective. I mean, how is this a job?
It's amazing the range of career opportunities you might have at Selfridges. You just never know if you...
And the bloke who goes round pretending to be Norman Wisdom, delivering mail to people. What a job.
Only in the last sort of 15 years or so did MI5 begin to advertise for jobs. Before that, it was all just, I don't know how they found people, but presumably in the public schools, right? Or whatever, or in the military. But yeah, this lady was I reckon, hired by the same means, right? You know, identified by the same sort of criteria.
I reckon she could put a chokehold on you, a real tough one. You know, she could really Daniel Penny someone.
It's going to take.
Is it dangerous? I mean, have you ever been attacked by anyone?
Oh yes. I mean, we have some people. They can be very nice when they're stopped. In a lot of instances, some could be fright. You know, the knowledge of being caught doing wrong, and you're wondering what's going on. But you get the vicious shoplifter as well. one of my colleagues, he had a knife across his throat, a lino knife. Been bitten. I've had anti-tetanus injections and attended Middlesex Hospital. Been bitten in the arms. Been told I should be put in the oven. My colleague and I should be put in the oven because the Germans would have done well by us if we'd been put in the ovens in Auschwitz and bitten in the leg. We shall never go away, of course.
Who got down there?
She was a Mauritian lady. She was carrying some bananas. She slipped in the bananas, fell on her knees, and bit me in the leg. All right. And then...
Did she get away?
Sorry, I was just going to say, like, unless I'm wrong, she's got a North Welsh accent, right? You really don't hear many North Welsh people on TV, even now. There's not that many people in North Wales. Anyway.
In fact, pretty much the only person with this accent I can think of in any movie or TV show, in Bedknobs and Broomsticks, right? There's an old Welsh lady who encourages Miss Price to take in the kids at the start. She's got this accent. If you rewatch that film, but yeah, it's a very rare one.
I'm guessing this woman probably speaks Welsh as well, or like grew up speaking Welsh, but
yeah,
which is known mostly in the north of Wales or Carmarthenshire, I think. But is Johan Griffith not from North Wales or Rhys Ifans? Neither of them.
I'm not sure.
We don't have to go down the who's Welsh route.
Yeah.
No, indeed. No. I could honestly say there's only very few I've lost, and they've been bigger than me.
I keep asking for somebody to be on here, this side. Thanks, dear. I've lost one of them.
We've just introduced the new pet coffin.
Yeah.
This is for children who just lost their hamster or their gerbil or their butcherica. And they put it in this little box, and then they put the lid on. And we also supply a flowering bulb with this, a crocus.
Yeah.
And when they buried the box, they put the crocus in on top of it, and then they can remember it in the years
certainly
to come.
Unusual. That's great.
It's all made of cardboard deliberately so that you don't dig it up in a year's time. It's all biodegradable, so it all disappears.
Yeah.
I mean, children forget things very quickly, and to make it disappear is fine.
What's that you've got? Is that a...
This is a poster which we thought you could hang up,
Yeah.
rather than have these on the shelf.
Yeah.
If you held these up in the shop so that when people come in, I mean, pets don't die all the time.
Right.
You always grow.
So again, there's a guy who works in the Selfridge store who designs hamster
pet coffins. I want a pet coffin now. I'm going to go down to Selfridges.
Always grow. If it's very badly creased, just leave it there for a few seconds, you see? But if it's not too bad,
Does it ever chap your hands, all that, Steve?
too wicked to burn.
Wonder when all these people retired, Simon. They must have all retired at some point.
Well, this guy in particular, I think there's a certain poignancy here because although he himself does not wear hats, he's this is the very fag end of people wearing hats. I mean, you see one or two of the middle-aged men wandering around the store with hats on, but this is this is the sunset of the hat section, I would say.
I know some guys now wear flat caps, but it's mostly an homage to this time. People miss this time, don't they?
Yeah. I mean, he's got his kind of Sid James hat there, but not many men wear
There is a bit of an
those.
unusual thing about that part of London, though, West End and so on. There are an unusual amount of hat shops and things like that still going. And I often wonder how they stay in business. Is it just like a select few posh guys in that couple of square
I
miles?
suppose you've got your seasonal hats, for going to like the Henley Regatta and stuff like that, or for event hats, horse racing, or country pursuits, shooting, stuff like that. You've got your deerstalker on the shelf there. So I suppose there's going to be one or two people, and they'll pick up a Panama hat so they can, sashay around Florence in the summer in their linen suit or whatever. But it's a kind of it's an elite tier of person.
It's not everybody who wears a hat these days.
No, and I think there's a thing. I mean, I always remember there was a line in John Le Carre says Smiley doesn't wear a hat because he thinks it makes him look ridiculous. And I think a lot of people probably sort of feel that now. They'd feel too kind of over-presented in some way. You know.
Well, I mean, I've got that hat that I wore in a couple of shorts and things.
Mm.
And you know, I've worn it out a couple of times with the little one because, you know, you can imagine she loves it. But if we went out as a family, I think the missus would say, like, this is a bit ostentatious. Like, you can't just walk around with that thing. Who do you think you are, type thing? You know what I mean? It's just because it just feels a bit showy, doesn't it?
It's other people's self-consciousness, as you say, of the hat. I mean, you know, I could perfectly wear a hat, but it would be like a piece of costume to sort of show it off and to enjoy
it feels like costume. I think that's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I want to bring them back the cape, of course. I still want the cape to come back.
Well, that would be a good section in Selfridges to have.
Pipes as well, like a bendy pipe as well. I mean, you're talking the Sherlock Holmes outfit, basically.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, why not? I mean, I'm a cigar guy, as you know, but yeah, why not bring back the pipe? Yeah. I mean, I think that some of our friends, like if you've been to events and things, people do dress. You do see them. People do have pipes, and people do wear hats and waistcoats, and people do dress up in some of our. But I don't think our friends are normal, Simon.
No, and it's the line between enjoying it and integrating it into your world, and it being kind of larpy, isn't it? That, you know, that you're just doing it really to create a sort of temporary impression. I mean, our friend Panama Hat he will wear a hat without being asked, you know, and just, you know, it's part of his lifestyle. But sometimes it can just appear that people are trying a bit too hard with a hat.
You put that hat on.
Whenever I've talked about bringing back the cape, the missus, in a usual sea brick way, will just cut it down and just says you're too short for a cape. That's the whole fucking brilliant.
Woman is cruel.
Yeah, very cruel. You know, shot down my dreams of going to live in Nova Scotia as well.
Didn't you go on?
Well, she said you'll be too cold. I said I'll buy a coat. She said you'll be miserable. Well, you won't stick it out. You'll last one winter, she said. So.
What was the thing she said to you about your tweet only got 47 likes or something because it was too exclusive?
Yes, if you were born after my stuff about Golden Wonder crisps and Orangina, not inclusive enough. So if you're born after 1985, won't mean anything to anyone, she said.
They always have to hack you down, don't they?
I know. How about building me up? You know. She says you're too full of yourself. Your ego's too big. You love yourself too. I said, well, somebody's got to love me, you know. Anyway, let's carry on.
On his head.
That was funny, wasn't it?
Yeah. When we stopped him outside, he said he forgot it was on his head. Do you remember?
I remember that. That was funny, wasn't it? He was quite funny, really, wasn't he, that man?
Yeah. He took it all in good part, didn't he?
I'd know his face again, but not I couldn't remember his name.
Took it all in good part, though.
Excuse me. Hello. Would you like to try some, Shaw? It's our new fragrance by Christian Dior. Hold on a moment. We're giving away a lovely bag and a soap free when you spend £12.
It's nice to see Jeffrey Dahmer out doing a bit of shopping there.
Is this the same girl from earlier?
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
I'm a one. Where's it? Where one?
Yeah.
Good shot of her. Good shot of her.
Yeah. She's got. There's something about her sort of persistence in this thing of spraying stuff on people, and her talking about, you know, people not liking it, and you think there's probably all sorts of people who are allergic to perfume who she's just spraying willy-nilly, you know. Never mind.
I'm not going through that.
Why is that? Don't you need any aftershave today?
No.
No? We'll take a leaflet on the promotion, okay? I'm starved and hungry.
I noticed the moustache is still in 1982.
Yeah.
And I've often wondered about what exactly and when exactly was the moustache killed off. And I have speculated that it was AIDS.
Yes.
Specifically AIDS and Freddie Mercury that killed off the...
It was that combination, the tash and the large frame glasses as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and possibly that Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Didn't he have a moustache?
Yeah,
it became associated with gay men, right?
Yeah, and AIDS, like the combination of AIDS, gay men, Freddie Mercury getting ill, and all of that.
I'd probably say 87, 88. It probably went out in Britain.
Something killed the moustache, didn't it? I
one-
mean, when did Burt Reynolds stop being like cool?
Oh.
You know, mid '80s.
Yeah.
There was a moment.
Yeah, probably that. Yeah.
The, one thing-
Magnum PI.
One thing I think hasn't really changed much is that English people are just generally not, or like British people and maybe beyond, I don't know, it's not really very keen on direct sales, right? Direct attempts at sales. They're just, can I get away from this? You know, I don't want this.
Yeah, there's this has been commented on. I've got a couple of books here. There's one by Jeremy Paxman called The English, and there's one by Kate Fox called Watching the English, and they both discuss this. And it apparently goes back to class, right? And Kate Fox in particular has got a whole chapter on British squeamishness about money and transaction. And it goes back to, you don't want anything to draw attention to the fact that a transaction is taking place. And she claims that this is why you thank the bus driver. This is why, you know, you're always acting like somebody's doing you a favor rather than you're paying for it, because all of the interactions are designed around not drawing attention to the fact that money has changed hands. This even goes to things like buying around at the pub, not being a financial, like it's just like everything is geared towards not drawing attention to the fact that money is involved.
Yeah.
So
deep anti-mercantile sentiment.
Yeah.
Which rather contrasts with what a lot of people slag Britain off for, like the mercantile island, or you know, the mercantile Albion or whatever. It's like, shut up.
No, this
We're
is
actually not.
a very good writer on this exact topic, which I'll draw people's attention to again. Hilaire Belloc. He's got one particular book, you know, the one I'm talking about, where he talks about exactly this topic. But anyway, let's carry on.
Ladies and gentlemen, Selfridges is now closing. We thank you for shopping with us and take this opportunity to wish you a safe journey home and look forward to seeing you soon. Good evening.
Since 9 o'clock, Selfridges have taken between £250,000 and £500,000. Now it's a ghostly place again. But at 10 to 9 tomorrow, the same cast of 3,000 will be standing by for another performance.
They took £250,000 that day, did they say?
Yeah.
Bloody hell. In 1982.
Yeah, so that's millions and millions now, right?
Oh, well, that explains how they can keep on Camel Man and Norman Wisdom and bloody Hamster Funeral Man. You know,
Yeah.
I wonder who's really bankrolling it. I wonder who's making the actual money there, you know?
However, according to the internet, Selfridges has been experiencing some revenue growth, but it has been having increasing losses. Pre-tax losses more than doubled to 340 million in this last financial year, from 126 million on the previous year. Obviously, things like operating costs going up massively. 42 million in the year prior, 145 million now before tax. Revenue for the whole group was up to 1.6 billion, which was up from 800 million in the previous year. So, yeah.
Their costs are in the billions and growing fast. That's good.
Online sales, 69 million in the UK in pounds.
It's not huge.
So there we go. I mean, a couple of tiny little criticisms in there, Simon, but
yeah,
in general, I would say he stuck to the cinema verite style.
Absolutely, yeah. It's his kind of love of whimsy and the mischievous, and you know, finding the character by letting people just speak into the camera, reveal themselves, and you catch those kind of telling moments.
There he is, look, the director Adam Curtis. So that was actually his debut. That was his very first documentary, so not a bad one to start with.
No, does the director have anything to do with the editing? Does the director are they in the editing?
Well, I imagine he would, because he started out doing his own films on That's Life, where he's always had this style, I think, of editing his own stuff. And I think he's always felt, because that just gives you more power as a director, really, when you imprint your own style on something.
Let's have a look. Was there an editor credited? Let's have a look. Series producers. There was a film editor.
Okay. Yeah,
there was one. I mean, maybe he had Curtis over his shoulder or something.
Just after that, I think. There we go. Christine Garner.
There you go.
So someone to do the technical cutting on the old Moviola machine or whatever they used at the BBC at that time.
I just asked because I did think there was a couple of editorial touches that I knew it was Curtis already, but I thought they fitted with his style. But yeah, so I suspect he was involved in the editing.
Yeah.
But he's not all over it, like obviously he would be from sort of The Living Dead onwards.
No, he did one more of these, which was At the Seaside, which we'll cover next week. And then there's a couple more early Curtis, isn't there, Simon? There's
several, yeah. So we've got one about war correspondence. That's is it Trumpets and Typewriters, or Typewriters and Trumpets?
Yes.
Which we will look at. And there will also be the one which I find the most interesting, the Great British Housing Disaster, which is obviously very relevant these days. There's several other Curtis films from that period in the early 80s. He did one called Italians, The Mayor of Montemelone in 84. He did one called The Cost of Treachery in 1984, which actually sounds quite interesting. And a couple for the 40 Minutes strand, one called Bombay Hotel and one called The Kingdom of Fun at the end of the 80s. I'll have a look for these, see if they're around. I'm not sure, how much of it actually survives online, but if it's there, we'll consider any
we'll
option.
find masters of research as we are foundations of research.
That's right.
If there's a will, there's a way.
That's right.
Because we're just kind of delaying hypernormalization forever, basically. I think there's Bitter Lake, isn't there, to come as well?
Yeah, Hypernormalization and Bitter Lake, I think, are two really good ones. And then it gets a bit difficult because the form, is you'll see anyway.
Well, there's Can't Get You Out of My Head, and somehow we're going to do Trauma Zone.
It's like 7 hours. It was 14 hours in our way.
There was a guy in our scene who, like about 2020, I think, when Can't Get You Out of My Head came out, various people, including me, had been saying how interesting Curtis was and all this new series might be really interesting. Hypernormalization sparked off loads of debate and all this stuff. And then it came on, and like from the first episode, it was all about racism and stuff. And the guy I was talking to, he'd never seen Curtis before. Was like, what the hell have you recommended this to me for? So it all gets quite different by then. But, Bitter Lake is really, really interesting. Hypernormalization is famous, isn't it? I mean, loads of people.
It's probably as much. It's probably, if he had one masterpiece, I would point to Hypernormalization. Right. Although when we finally finish this, Simon, and come up with our rankings at the end, I have to say, Century of the Self was fucking phenomenal.
Yeah, I think so. That's to me the key one, and in a sense, most of his themes in his subsequent work expand on from there. That's, I think, where his mind was a bit more blown, and it lent itself to digesting all sorts of interesting areas.
I will also say, as a single one shot, episode 2 of The Living Dead was mind blowing as well.
Yeah.
The one about the CIA,
Ewan Cameron and all that.
Yeah.
Oh, it was just that stuff was dark. So Living Dead stands out in my mind as well. So.
Yeah.
That was like reprogramming people's brains in some cases. Right?
Oh, so dark.
Yeah.
It was asked in the chat earlier, and I'm sure this has been asked before, but have you considered asking Adam Curtis on for one of these or for an interview or anything?
In a strange way, I'm kind of in two minds about that because I feel like I don't know. I don't want to produce any headlines.
Yeah,
right,
we've definitely considered it. Yeah,
but I can consider it. I'm sure he talked to us, but
yeah, but you don't want that thing of meeting your heroes.
But I also don't want it to be like. I mean, imagine we with a reason that Curtis was axed from the BBC or something. That would be terrible.
Yeah, and he comes on and he says, "You've got it completely wrong. You've got it completely wrong."
But then we could tell him that he had a grand vision of what the BBC is supposed to be, but it was a fantasy, and
He
you
writes
won't
off
be
our
able
whole
to
theory.
disagree.
Fancy. Yeah.
You'll have to acknowledge that we were right.
If I could just put some stuff forward here, we had one of our viewers and our friends, CCRU Video, who did the Foundations of Shakespeare advert recently. He sent in some comments when we were looking at the last episode of All Watched Over by Machines of Loving Grace on the use of contrapuntal sound, which we've discussed today. And he sends the following comments. I'll just read this out. It's Curtis often combines this footage with contrapuntal sound, i.e. happy or dreamy music, for which the glazed-over viewer could seem ironic, but for anyone paying attention, it creates confusion and a sickness in the stomach. I think contrapuntal music serves a few purposes. For the masses, it stops them turning off the channel with their remotes, prevents them overtly being shocked, but it forces engagement and internalization of what's happening, rather than a quick reaction that can disrupt or end the viewing. It's a juxtaposition that creates a riddle for the viewer. Why is it being presented like this? Oh, it's gone now, I can keep watching. But it's remembered and can then be joined up with the larger thesis and the secondary device. The secondary device, the darker music, which will then come in, not during the violence or the pictures of genocide, but when policy and more zoomed out ideological or philosophical things are being discussed. Because objectively, this is more important, affects far more people, policy for entire civilizations, and is usually what the very violence has resulted from. Most of Curtis's films are about how ideas are the most dangerous thing, and this is always expressed through his form. Both types of music relieve each other. The darkness properly allows us to process the violence on lag, but is now sandwiched with ideological ideas associated and processed with it. And the tonally shifting backwards and forwards between these different emotions is filmmaking rhythm, integral to what actually makes these documentaries entertaining or engaging as art. One of the most powerful ways this is done is in the opening of hypernormalization, with the music getting darker when the general incoherent state of the world is being described, but which then goes back to dreamy music, including the lyrics, dreams like this, once we see dead bodies being dragged, or at least the caked blood of dead bodies being dragged across the floor. So he uses this to get the violence past the viewer, so they don't change the channel, but perhaps also past the BBC censors too. Sound is the most mysterious part of film. Some say it's 60% of the film medium. Curtis is doing his darndest to make you concerned about ideology and ideas with dark synthesizer tones and noise. What he's trying to do is wake people up to what they normally think of as abstract. He's literally turning on its head the perception that one death is a tragedy, a million deaths are a statistic. By putting the ideas of men and ideological concepts within a horror aesthetic, he wants you worried about the statistics in a kind of per capita horror. And that certainly chimes with stuff I've said before about he does use tropes from horror films. You see it very much in things like the Mayfair set and in The Power of Nightmares, where he'll cut in those kinds of flashes of from clips from films, or the typical things like the John Carpenter music or the music from other kinds of psychological thriller or horror films. So yeah, I'd agree.
Very interesting indeed. It hadn't occurred to me that the dark music only comes in when we get the kind of men in the suit and ties, basically.
It's the more hypnotic, yeah.
It's the bureaucracy. It's the Rand Corporation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. There's a couple of super chats. None on Entropy that I can see, but there are other ones. Jay has just sent £5. Well, thank you very much for that, sir. Juno says, choosing your own media gives agency, but denies an organic information environment. Forget the right answers. We don't know the right questions to ask. Well, exactly. There's an art of curation, a silent curator on television that is now removed.
Yeah.
And one of my beliefs is that most people in most places need a guide. Right.
Yeah.
They're not going to come up with things they need to know on the like, if there's nobody there to guide them, it will just be that they only consume slop, basically.
Yeah.
Chris Primer says, nonsense. It's good to show contempt for your audience. Tell them that you hate them and that they'll love you all the more, and they'll love you all the more. Well, I admire my audience. They're an audience who've been around for so long. I admire them so much.
Going full Mandy.
Mandy. I mean, I mean, I kind of, I often tell people to go and watch Tim Pool. So I've got a blend of kind of healthy level of contempt, I think. But I do think it can go a little bit too far as well. I mean, I won't mention any names, but there's one person I've been watching on and off recently who's really quite harsh to his super chatters. Like somebody sent him like 30 quid or $50 or something, and he just like, he's just like like horrible to them. I've never done that, so maybe I need to be more like that Russian girl that I saw. Absolute Ultra says, as a child in Richmond, I recall these ghastly buildings slightly beyond the park, asking if they were skyscrapers. I wonder if they left some lasting impression on me. He also says, recently you said Richmond had improved, though I have only seen decline. Perhaps it has since the 19th century. In what ways do you personally find it better? During the pandemic, a lot of places closed down. If you know Richmond at all, there was, in fact, funny enough, we were talking about Selfridges. There was a very big old-fashioned department store. I think it was a Debenhams on the corner of Richmond, and that closed down. It didn't survive COVID, and it was just left empty, and it looked terrible. It looked like, and a number of other businesses have closed down that high street. Well, there's now a very fancy sushi restaurant in the place where Debenhams was. How they make enough money to afford the rent on that place, I don't know. But while it's there, it looks very swanky. And a number of other businesses have opened where the closed ones had been, and they look pretty swanky. So when you go down Richmond now, it feels like its former glory has been returned, because it just feels good, and it's busy, and the businesses are on the higher end side. So when I take my family there for the veggie ice cream, it feels good again. It wasn't like that just a couple of years ago, but it seems like that. And Kingston has started to have some of that come back for the high street as well. What I mean is, when a business closed down and it is replaced with vape shop, Turkish barber, charity store, like that is going down, right? When it's replaced by an actual business that spends money on the decor and the lighting and so on, then it feels like a place is going up.
Yeah.
In Kingston, they've opened a brand new cinema there, a pretty fancy one. So Kingston feels a little bit better than it did a couple of years ago as well. So
maybe I've seen a similar thing happening. I went to a village near me, sort of between a village and a town near me recently, actually. And I was struck. I walked along and noticed somebody had opened up like a nice new coffee place, not a chain, an independent place, but something that looked comfortable and welcoming. It didn't look snobbish or overpriced, and it looked like people were enjoying it. There was a sort of, given everything that's happening, the wall-to-wall slop and misery, there was a retreat back to the warm and the social, that people were they were prepared to go in and just sit down, have a coffee and lounge about and just be comfortable again. And maybe those sorts of places, as you say, with people getting a sense of the value added from going there, is going to make a comeback.
I mean, in the case of Richmond, there's a number of businesses that are open that intrigue me a little bit. One of the places that is open is called the Pasta Evangelists. I was thinking, does pasta need an evangelist? Because pasta seems to be pretty like mainstream. Like nobody's really against pasta. So why have they opened this place called the Pasta Evangelists? But it's kind of like, it kind of looks interesting, and I might go and check it out. You know what I mean? So it's like, there's a lot of places like that now. Whether they'll survive or not, I don't know. But at the minute, it looks all right. Seamus O'Blaine says, big bum, thick thigh, dommy mommy Brogan for the win. Oh, that's that was the shop, the woman with the file that we saw.
Yeah, Miss Brogan, yes.
Miss Brogan. What is it about the dommy mommy thing? That's not just big with Tory MPs. It's also, I've noticed, big with the Zoomer crowd. When I was running WWYD, if you remember that, the Zoomers had odd tastes where they'd like a masculine woman, Simon.
Yeah. At least it's not tomboy abs. Yeah. At least we've moved
Well,
away from the perversities of the.
it's kind of there was a veering on tomboy abs, I would say. You
Yeah.
know, there was
Well,
kind of
Emma
two
Watson.
ways. I mean, there's the tomboy abs, and who was that woman who was in Star Wars? Who was like a Trump fan?
Oh yes, yes, I know the one you mean.
Well, you know that bit, that
Latin
build
lady.
where she's kind of thick built
Yeah.
and looks like she can knock you out. I mean, there's a certain type of Zoomer that kind of likes that idea of the woman towering over.
Bit of rough
you know,
handling.
of like the Viking woman or something. You know, issues. I'm telling you.
Was Alicia Kearns one of those, or what?
And I think Alicia Kearns is in the same mold. You know,
She kind of dresses like Super Nanny or something, or
exactly Super Nanny. You know,
Yeah.
Um,
Thick arms for pulling pints and
you've been a
disciplining
naughty boy,
boys.
haven't you? You've
Yeah.
got to sit on the naughty step today.
I dare say that porn is a factor in that.
Well, who knows? Who knows? And Novatrix, of course, old-time WWID fans will know that Gina Carano was kicked out of the Med Event Mafia by Monica Bellucci, I remember, for not being hot enough. I remember that. Novatrix says, brilliant that both Simon Roberts and Horace are here for the complete team. Bless you for the efforts. Here comes to completing the entirety. I reckon it's going to take us the rest of the year.
Rest of our lives, possibly.
The rest of our lives.
But yeah, the rate we're going. By the way, have you looked in on the guy who was running the unofficial WWID?
Well, Vince
tournament?
McMahon, right? The lessons of Vince McMahon. You never mention the competition.
No.
You treat outlaws like they don't exist. You know, these are just classic rules. So
he may try.
Modding Forever says you should analyze Wicker's World. Alan Wicker's World. I think at some point in the history of the channel, I covered a Wicker's World that looked at San Francisco boomer, like in the 60s. Alan Wicker goes to San Francisco in 1967.
To Haight-Ashbury or something. Yeah.
And I think I did and it was looking at like hippies and people doing weird things and cult, like communes and things like that. So somewhere when I look at the 60s, I watched an Alan Wicker that exists in the archive somewhere. Broman Hank says, consolation prize for your experience with my fellow countrywoman, AA. South Africans aren't the most gentle. I mean, it was just the way she said it. Back to beginners. No good effort or anything like that. Just on your bike, son. You're not good enough for the big leaves yet. I was like, hold on a second. We only lost 12-10, you know.
That's very creditable, you know. I've always got on with South African women myself, actually, for some reason. Don't know why.
Well, I mean, Alicia was straight, didn't try to sugarcoat it or anything. But
no.
The problem is that my positioning's not right. Is that I'm staying on the baseline too much. And in pickleball, you have to, whether you're serving or returning, you have to go forward straight away. And that's where I was being caught out a lot. And I was playing them. There was an old guy there, much older guy, but he was wily. He was tactical. And like, I don't know, it's not tennis basically. So it takes a while to get used to. And my backhand, I'm not able to return on the backhand at all. So this wily old sod played it to my backhand every time. And I was like, fucking hell. And he was like, yeah, I noticed you were struggling on that backhand. So I played it there every time. Wink, you know. So it was him. His wily play basically sent me back to beginners.
This is going to be a psychological war to the death. I can tell. This is coming on.
I'll be back. I'll be back in a few weeks. I'll be back. Full Spectrum Submission says, my ex was stolen from me by the bastard who owns Selfridges. Special treatment of a Canadian billionaire. I'm not bitter. The family leased Fort Belvedere from the Crown Estate. If incredibly wealthy.
Wow.
And Dan says, are you aware of an Australian channel writer worth listening to?
An Australian channel writer?
Well, we've got friends in Australia. We've got Chris Gard, but he hasn't got a channel really.
Yeah.
I mean, he does songs and things on his channel.
I've encouraged a couple of people to set up channels in Australia because it'd be nice to see something happening over there. 'Cause it feels a bit dead. That scene over there.
Mike from Imperium Press is based in Canada. He's Canadian. Sorry, he's based in Australia, but he's Canadian. But he is in Canada. He is in Australia. So, and our friend Marcus, of course, he doesn't have his own channel, but he was our other kind of link to Oz. So those are the three people I would point to. Unfortunately, how can I put this? A lot of the people in the Australian scene are involved with some unsavory sorts. I'll just put it that way. How I won't have anything to do with because, well, I've got my reasons. But yeah, I mean, those would be my Mike from Imperium makes good. His Substack is excellent, and he records them as an audio as well. So
you've got Iron Duke 99 is in Australia. He does some good streams as well.
He's a Brit. He's British, though, isn't he?
He's from London. Yeah, he sounds a bit Aussie because he's lived there for so long. But yeah, he's out there. But yeah.
Oh right, okay. Well, Iron Duke then. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. If you do a stream of Iron Duke, it's like 2 a.m. for him or something. It's 1 in the afternoon. Yeah.
It wouldn't be nice to hear the local lads, local Zoomers, doing something out there for us to listen to about what their takes are. That would be.
Lady of Shalott, of course, is based in Oz.
Yep.
I mean, those are our friends. They're our friends in Australia. Those people that we've just mentioned. So, yeah. And I think that's it for the super chats. Horace, where can people find you, sir? Horace.
He's
he's
hanging his washing out again.
Oh right, okay. Simon, where can people find you?
I'm on Twitter at Simon__Roberts. And if I can just make a quick shill, do go and have a listen to the very good stream with our friends Scrump and Evelyn interviewing Ed Dutton the other night about his new biography of Jonathan Bowden, which looks very, very interesting. And apropos of next week's Curtis, where we look at the seaside, you might go away and read Bowden's essay on Punch and Judy, or go and listen to his talk, which I think is on YouTube, about very, very interesting history and semiology of Punch and Judy.
If you've never seen Bowden, the Punch and Judy lecture is legendary. It really is.
That's classic Bowden. Who knew Punch and Judy was so interesting?
Absolutely fascinating, yeah.
Sorry, I was away from the desk for a second. It was at Infinite Horus on Twitter and eternalhorus.substack.com, where I will have a new essay out probably next week.
And I will just say, buy courses at the Academic Agency, Foundations of Economics. I've got a number of economics videos coming up. So economics is back. It was like economics disappeared for 5 years because the economy was too crazy to talk about after COVID. Now I think a lot of the chickens are coming home to roost. I've got a video out next week about why I think they're talking about the great divergence between America and Europe, that America is really rich now and Europe is poor and all this. There's a productivity gap and all of this. Unfortunately, a lot of it is bollocks. The American economy is not booming. It is a mirage. So I've got a video next week about the everything bubble and about how they basically printed $17 trillion since 2010 in America. 17 trillion. They printed off more money in the past decade than they have from the founding of the country to 2010. I mean, it's just insane what they've done in America. And I think some of that is starting to come apart now under Trump, which is why they're actually doing the Doge stuff and Musk and all of that. But underneath all the smoke and mirrors, they're actually doing austerity in America for the first time in a long time, as they are in this country and Canada and every other place, because the gravy train is running out, basically. So there we are. Yeah, pick up Foundations of Economics and all the other great courses. And I will see you tomorrow morning, where I'll be talking about Ukraine. And if you want to catch me live, it's next Tuesday, office hours. Cheers, lads. I'm going to go and find some Orangina and some Golden Wonder. If you can recreate that meal by this time next week, I'll take off my... if you can have a meal with Golden Wonder as the crisps and Orangina as the drink, then you're a better man than me, because I can't find either of those items.
That's it.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Cheers, everyone.
What goes on in this town is none of your business.
As long as I'm living here, it is.
Then maybe you shouldn't be living here!
Well, that's easily fixed.